Chapter 573. The sky was bright, and tens of thousands of corpses were piled up. More than half of the priests were dead, and the rest could only struggle at death's door. They could not even withstand Emperor Ye's music. Their divine power was restless, and they could explode at any time. Emperor Yi was immersed in his own world of Guqin Dao. The god-slaying eagle hovered high in the sky, flapping its huge wings. Anyone who got close to it would be sent flying. Gu Qingyu and the other inner sect members took the opportunity to retreat to the sect to recuperate. After a night of fighting, they were mentally exhausted. They could not withstand Emperor Ye's music, and Emperor Yi could not take care of them. Only Medusa was left to fight. Among the 100,000-strong army, only a few priests were able to resist, but they were all slaughtered by Medusa. Only 2 captains managed to escape the battlefield in a flash and rushed into the distance. Nearly 10,000 priests were wiped out. The remaining emperor-level ordinary soldiers either self-destructed, surrendered, or were killed by Medusa. Blood flowed like rivers. It was a tragic scene for 100,000 people. 30,000 of them were captured. Another 30,000 were detonated by Emperor Yi using his emperor power. The rest were all killed by Medusa. Emperor Yi looked down at the rebels, his eyes cold. We were forced to do this. Lord Emperor Yi, we are willing to submit to the Guangzong. Please spare our lives. The 5 forces of Xianyue County immediately knelt before Emperor Yi, not daring to resist. The sect master and the elders of the major families turned pale. They thought about how they had insulted Yi Qinghan. Did they still have the chance to beg for mercy now? At this moment, all the outer sect disciples rushed out and glared at the disciples of the 5 forces. These people were the ones who scolded the most yesterday for glory. How could they let them go now? Senior sister, they insulted the sect master and humiliated the Guangzong. This is unforgivable. Many young disciples had a deep sense of belonging to the Guangzong. Looking at the people of the 5 forces, they were burning with anger. They were waiting for Emperor Ye's order to rush into the enemy group and kill them. Medusa stared at some people. She saw them clearly when they were scolding the Guangzong yesterday. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Medusa raised her sword and swung it down, taking away the lives of some priests and venerable sovereigns. She killed all the people who had cursed her the most fiercely yesterday. The rest of them were so scared that they knelt on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. Emperor Yi looked down at the crowd and said coldly, "This empress will give you one last chance. If you dare to be my enemy again, I will kill you. Now scram." When everyone heard this, how could they dare to stay? They all ran away madly. However, there were a few dozen people who were still kneeling on the ground, unwilling to leave. It was a time of war, and only by staying in a strong sect would they have a chance to survive. The insane sect had Emperor Yi and Yi Qinghan. At the very least, they had a chance to protect themselves. These people were very smart. They hoped that they could stay and pledge their loyalty. Emperor Yi didn't want to test these people at first, but Lu Outyin rushed out and said excitedly, "You can stay after the test. We need our own army after all. There are too few people from the outer sect." Lu Outyin was the only one who was excited. War was cruel to many people. However, to him it was the best time to expand his territory and plant the Lulan flag in the mythical plain. Xia Qiyue also wanted to make a name for herself. She wanted to rebuild the Saint Dragon dynasty and show the glory of the De Xia family. More than 30,000 captives became Lu Outyin's capital. Although there were no priests and they were all venerable sovereigns and great sovereigns, with Lu Outyin around, they could build a powerful army. "Uncle Lu, I'll leave the outer sect disciples to you. The insane sect does need the protection of an army." Emperor Yi thought for a moment, and decided to leave the outer sect matters to Lu Outyin. Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue would join hands to build a country and seal the territory. The insane sect would become the holy sect of the country. This was the best thing that could happen. Is it convenient? What about Brother Yi? Lu Outyin was overjoyed. With the support of the outer sect, there would be someone he could trust. This army could develop quickly. "It's okay. Master doesn't care about this," Emperor Yi said in a low voice. He was very confident in Yi Qinghan's safety. "You can discuss the army with Uncle Xia. The military expenses will be taken from the insane sect. In the early stage, the inner sect will be your backing. The outer sect will be your vanguard. If someone from the inner sect is willing to go out and build a country with you, Master and I will definitely support it. Emperor Yi nodded. He hoped that the insane sect would become stronger as soon as possible, so that he would not be tied down here. The insane sect announced the establishment of an army that night. It was named the Blade of Lu Lan, and recruited soldiers. Si Wuxia and Xianyan also joined the army. They were the two vanguard superintendents on the left and right respectively. Roger was the center vanguard. Most of the outer sect disciples joined the army as low-level officers to prevent the army from rebelling again. It was easy to recruit soldiers in troubled times. Not only did the adventurers from Xianyu County choose to join the army, the scattered immortal guards, and rogue cultivators from the surrounding cities all joined the Blade of Lu Lan. In 3 days, the Blade of Lu Lan had an army of 120,000 soldiers. The outer sect did not lack priests. Medusa distributed all the godhoods she obtained to the outer sect. Each person received 1 godhood, and the rest were used as military expenses. 9,000 godhoods were used as rewards. She was not afraid that the army would make a contribution, but she was afraid that the contribution would be too little. Killing enemies would give them divinity crystals. Defeating an army would give them divinity crystals. If they made a great contribution, they would be promoted by 3 ranks. Even if they joined later, as long as they were recognized by the higher-ups of the Blade of Lu Lan, they would be promoted to 10,000 men commander. In less than a week after the army was established, more than 300 outer sect disciples had become priests. On the 10th day, the Blade of Lu Lan had 1,500 priests. Among them, 1,000 were outer sect disciples, and the remaining 500 were recruited from the outside. The speed of the Blade of Lu Lan's construction was beyond Lu Outyan's imagination. Roger was excitedly training the army and treating the Blade of Lu Lan extremely cruelly. They were training day and night. 3 months of rations for Gongyang Wanluan's army of 100,000 was used up by them in 10 days. My lord, the army is already equipped with battle strength. We can use battle to nurture battle. Let's take down all the nearby cities. Roger excitedly rushed over and said to Lu Outyan, "All right, let's take down God's County, Martial Emperor County, and Suhai County first." Lu Outyan personally raised the flag and led the army towards God's County. At this moment, even the heavenly Qilin divine beast was recruited by him. Emperor Yi watched as the army was established. Xia Chiyue felt a little lonely and said, "Uncle Xia, I can provide you with divine beasts to help you build a dragon army. As for how far you can develop it, it will depend on your luck." Xia Chiyue's pupils shrunk and asked with a hoarse voice, "Do we have beast tamers? Where are the divine beasts coming from?" Emperor Yi hugged the divine zither and smiled. "I am the best beast tamer. Within 3 days, all the beasts above Emperor rank in the Mystic Moon Mountain range will submit to me." Emperor Yi then turned and walked towards the depths of the Mystic Moon Mountain range. The current divine cleansing prefecture was in imminent danger. All the major cities and counties were caught in the flames of war. The prefecture lord personally came out to fight the 2 divine prefectures. The Iron Dragon Army's supervisor died in battle, and was now under Lu Zhantian's command. However, they were still in a disadvantageous position. After all, the main forces of the 2 prefectures were pressuring them. The 2 captains who escaped from Kuang sect a month ago fled to the periphery of the battlefield, and entered the war zone's barracks. Once they entered the main hall of Gongyang Prefecture, they knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise their heads to look at the young man in the hall. Chapter 574. In the main war zone, in the vice commander's camp, a tall and handsome young man looked down at the 2 captains with a cold gaze. 100,000 soldiers were killed by a sect. Only the 2 of you escaped. Even the commander was assassinated. How dare you report this to me? The young man asked angrily. "Young commander, please spare us. We just want to remind you that there is a zither master in the crazy sect. It was because of her intervention that our 100,000 soldiers were defeated so quickly. Her zither music is very strange and can make many of our priests lose control of their divine power, causing a large number of soldiers to self-destruct. If you send troops to suppress us, you must pay attention to that woman. The two captains knelt on the ground and cried. The young commander was the commander of the divine army of Gongyang Prefecture, Gongyang Matian. He looked very young, but he was actually more than 30,000 years old. He was from the same era as the governor of the Steel Dragon Army. The governor died in his hands, so his strength was definitely stronger than the governor of the Steel Dragon Army. A zither master of a lower-level priest, no matter how strong she is not the reason for your defeat. 100,000 soldiers, 10,000 lower-level priests, and Gongyang Wanluan is a medium-level priest. Are you all trash? Gongyang Matian threw the cup in his hand and said sternly, "Men, drag them out and give them 100 whips." The god-beating whip was the cruelest divine weapon used by the army to punish soldiers. It whipped the soul and tortured the body, causing pain to the bone marrow. It was unbearable for priests, and most medium-level priests did not want to accept such punishment. No. Young commander, please give us a chance to make up for our mistakes. The captains begged bitterly. After 100 whips, they would be almost crippled. There will be a chance for you to make up for your mistakes. Drag it out. Gongyang Matian waved his hand impatiently. Dong dong dong. Gongyang Matian tapped the table with his fingertips and thought for a moment, then shouted towards the outside of the tent. Go and call the commander of the Wolf Army, Li Shui. The Wolf Army was the elite army of Gongyang Prefecture. There were 30,000 people in total, and they were all priests. Their heavenly wolves were all emperor-grade heavenly wolves. They were extremely powerful, and each heavenly wolf had a defensive divine artifact that was comparable to a divine priest. Such an army was invincible, and no one could stop them. Lu Zhantian had no choice but to avoid the battle, causing great damage to the Mushin estate. After a while, a middle-aged man bowed and entered the tent. He knelt on one knee and said in a muffled voice, "What are your orders, young marshal?" Li Shui, I'll give you 2 tasks. Lead 30,000 wolf riders to Xianyue County and encircle the Kuang sect. Capture the Guqin masters of the Kuang sect alive and bring them to me. The second task is to clean up the battlefield and kill all the rebels, Gongyang Matian said in a deep voice. Li Shui raised his eyebrows and said with a frown, Young marshal, there is no need for the wolf cavalry to deal with a small sect. You can just send a team of elites. Gongyang Wanluan's army of 100,000 was annihilated in one night. The Kuang sect has assassins and Guqin experts. Take 4 sky-shaking drums with you and you can block all soul attacks. You must not be careless and underestimate them when you are deep in the enemy's rear. Gongyang Matian said in a deep voice. Yes, young marshal. Li Shui said respectfully. Remember, try your best to capture the zither masters alive for me. Gongyang Matian said faintly. Li Shui bowed and retreated, leading the 30,000 wolf cavalry away. Lu Zhantian quickly received the news. What did you say? The 30,000 wolf cavalry of Gongyang Prefecture are heading southeast? Lu Zhantian frowned and opened the map. He found that the Kuang sect was located in the southeast. According to the spies, Emperor Yi suppressed 100,000 miscellaneous troops of Gongyang Wanluan. The wolf cavalry must be going there for revenge, the prefecture lord said in a low voice. Li Shui personally led the army to Xianyue County and took 4 sky-shaking drums with him. Emperor Ye's Guqin skills may not be of any use. The chief steward rushed in from outside and reported the news he had just received. Lu Zhantian was shocked. He hurriedly looked at the prefecture lord, bowed, and said, Zhantian is willing to lead people to Xianyue County to support the Kuang sect. No, the Kuang sect must rely on themselves. We are already in a tight spot. If it weren't for the fact that Gongyang Prefecture and Vanquishing Army Prefecture didn't want to cause unnecessary casualties, they would have already broken through. How can the broken cliff mountain withstand the joint attack of the 2 prefectures? The prefecture lord refused coldly. My lord, Yi Qinghan is in God Extinction Mountain. How can Emperor Yi stop the wolf cavalry alone? Li Shui is fierce and likes to fight head-on. He took 4 sky-shaking drums with him, which is enough to suppress her Guqin skills. Even if I lead 50,000 elites, I may not be able to stop Li Shui's 30,000 wolf cavalry, let alone her. Lu Zhantian said in a low voice. Look for yourself. Once the broken cliff mountain is breached, do we still have a way out? Let alone the Kuang sect being breached. Even if the Mushan prefecture's main city is breached, I can't let you go back to help. The prefecture lord rebuked angrily. You are now the only general in the vanguard. General Lu, you have to think of the big picture. The chief steward reminded him in a low voice. In the main tent, there was silence. Everyone was silent. After a long time, the prefecture lord said helplessly, now all of us are fighting for the Iron Battle Mercenary Group. They are renting out mercenaries and even medium extreme god priests. They will cooperate with whoever offers the highest price. However, we are at a disadvantage. I'm afraid we will have to pay twice the price of Gongyang Prefecture and Army Shattering Prefecture before they will agree to send out their troops. The Iron Battle Mercenary Group has 300,000 lower god priests and 300 medium god priests. They are stronger than our 3 prefectures. As long as we can win them over, I will agree even if we have to sign some unfair terms. Will the Iron Battle Mercenary Group stand on our side at this time? Lu Zhantian didn't think that Iron Battle Mercenary Group was a fool. The 3 divine nations were silent about the 2 prefectures besieging the Mushan prefecture. There must be a divine nation's interest in this. Since the Mushan prefecture had been sold out, they could only save themselves. If they couldn't save themselves, they would be destroyed. The prefecture lord sighed. I heard that Fei Tian and Taizhan had met once before, so I sent Fei Tian to negotiate personally. Now we can only pray that he succeeds. In the mystic Moon Mountain range, Emperor Yi entered the depths and played the divine tune Tao-seeking chant. It attracted countless deity-ranked divine beasts. The divine beasts were influenced by the zither music and lay docilely beside Emperor Yi. Where was their ferocious nature? Emperor Yi took the initiative to communicate with these divine beasts and made a promise. She would help these divine beasts level up and become lower extreme god priests. However, she requested for these divine beasts to help her for a few years. The divine beasts liked Emperor Ye's zither music very much. It allowed their mindless brains to have the ability to think. It seemed like they could really seek Tao and cultivate on their own. 10 divine beasts, 100 divine beasts, 300 divine beasts. After 2.5 days, Ren Huangyi had attracted almost all the divine beasts in the surroundings. However, Ren Huangyi was not satisfied. There were less than 1,000 divine-level ferocious beasts. They were not of much use. She then rushed to the 7 extinction grounds and set her sights on the 7 extinction snake. Chapter 575. Yi Qinghan was still trapped in the sorcerer god's tomb, trying to reverse engineer the 3 divine sword techniques. The divine sword technique was difficult to understand and contained the laws of the Tao. It was not something that could be mastered in a day. The stone tablet in front of him could withstand the attacks of divine weapons, but it had 3 sword marks on it. It could be seen that the divine sword technique was able to reverse yin and yang. If Yi Qinghan could not master the divine sword technique, he would not be able to pass the stone tablet. If he could not pass the stone tablet, he would not be able to obtain the inheritance and would have to stay here forever. Hence, he cleared his mind and focused on cultivating the divine sword technique. At this moment, Yi Qinghan could not imagine that the outside world had already turned into a mess. Even the insane sect had been dragged into the war. Time flew by and some people felt that time was too slow. A day felt like a year, and they could die from the war at any time. Accidents happened everywhere. Even if they hid in their homes, they would be wiped out by the army. Lu Outyen led an army of more than 100,000 and split into 3 groups, directly attacking the root of the problem. They took over God's County and the other major cities and counties, cleaned up the enemy soldiers, seized the God crystals and top-grade spirit crystals, and conscripted the soldiers. As long as you join Lulan's blade and Lulan does not fall, your parents, wives, and children will not be harmed. Lu Outyen was strict and even cruel. He only had one word for deserters, and that was to kill them. For those who violated the military rules, the lightest punishment was whipping and the heaviest punishment was death. However, the rewards for joining Lulan's blade were also generous, especially the divine sparks. Killing 2 divine priests would earn 1 divine sparks and a promotion. In this chaotic world, heroes were born. The strong were hot-blooded while the soldiers were iron-blooded. The strong were always strong while the weak could only wait for death. With the support of the insane sect's intersect, Lu Lan's blade quickly took over the 10 major cities and built defensive fortifications. They also trained spies and eagle eyes to provide protection for the army's attack. On the 6th day, Emperor Yi led countless divine beasts and ferocious beasts to the back of Xixia Mountain. He opened up a separate area for the divine beasts to rest. Countless 7 demise snakes crowded together, scaring the divine beasts. They could not live peacefully. Roar! The enormous 7 demise serpent was about to evolve into a dragon. At this moment, it let out a low roar. Even the legs of the lesser apex divine beasts went soft. They didn't even have the courage to roar back. Emperor Yi had known the god bird for a long time, and he had learned how to trick it. He used the dragon blood and listened to the Tao's song to lure the 7 demise snake out. She wasn't sure if the god dragon inside Di Longtian would be willing to provide a drop of dragon blood, but she was sure that listen to the Tao's song was enough to calm the 7 demise snake down. Within 3 years, the intermediate deity worshipping the 7 demise serpent and Emperor Yi had made an agreement. The 7 demise serpent would lead the 7 demise serpent to help the insane faction for 3 years. Within those 3 years, Emperor Yi would be responsible for playing the Taoist hymn every day. He would also have to provide a drop of true dragon's blood to help the 7 demise serpent transform into a true dragon. Emperor Yi didn't even think about it before agreeing. Playing the listen to the Tao's song didn't make a difference to one more person. As for the drop of true dragon's blood, 3 years should be enough for her to find it. If she really couldn't find it, she would ask Di Longtian for help. Di Shang looked at Emperor Yi, who had brought so many mythical beasts, and couldn't help but have goosebumps. If these mythical beasts went out of control, they could devour the entire insane faction. You and Qinghan both have the same bad habit. For the sake of strengthening the insane faction, you're willing to give up your life. Di Shang frowned and scolded. Emperor Yi shrugged and smiled faintly. Don't worry. When Master returns, I'll send them away. This is a critical time, and it's worth it to take a little risk. Besides, I'm confident that I can control them. Di Shang nodded and muttered. This old man is old and can't help you much. When this is over, I'll have to return to the endless plains. What for? Sister Shui is taking care of the endless plains. They should be fine, right? Emperor Yi asked in surprise. The human emperor's sword. It has sacrificed so much for the human race. I want to find it and reforge the ancient killing god. Its glory shouldn't end in my hands. Di Shang felt lonely. He felt that the insane faction no longer needed him. He missed the days when he used the human emperor's sword to fight. He needed it to regain his faith. If you want to go back, you can go back now. Leave little Tian to me. I'll take good care of him. He's fighting on the battlefield with Uncle Lu. He'll be fine. Emperor Yi looked at the weathered Di Shang and lowered his head. In the end, Di Shang left. He needed the human emperor's sword. Back then, when the human emperor's sword broke, its main body pierced into a dead star in the primitive universe. It had long since disappeared. It would take a lot of time to find and reforge it. On the 2nd day after Di Shang left, a scout suddenly rushed over and reported that a 30,000-strong army had appeared in the northwest. It was the Wolf Cavalry, the elite team of the Gongyang Prefecture. Lu Outyan didn't underestimate this 30,000-strong army. After carefully investigating the origin of the Wolf Cavalry, he decided to inform Emperor Yi. The Wolf Cavalry wasn't easy to deal with. The 30,000-strong Wolf Cavalry was the main force of the army. The Lolan's blade couldn't be considered the main force because there weren't enough god priests. Only when the ratio of god priests to the army was 1:5 could they be considered the main force. Right now, the Lolan's blade wasn't even 1:10. The Wolf Cavalry was all god priests. 30,000 strong. Even Lu Zhantian said that even with the 50,000 strong god priests, they might not be able to stop the Wolf Cavalry. Emperor Yi stepped into the camp and looked at Lu Outyan while pointing at the map. The Wolf Cavalry will reach the Gan Mountain Range in 2 days. This Wolf Cavalry is enough to sweep through thousands of soldiers and horses. The Lolan's blade lacks a foundation. We definitely won't be able to defeat them by force. As long as we rely on a surprise attack, the Gan mountain range has many steep mountains and steep ridges. It's rugged and the air is filled with poisonous miasma. Therefore, the wolf cavalry will definitely have to travel from below. No need. Leave this battle to me, Emperor Yi said firmly. You alone? No way. The main battle zone's Lu Zhantian sent a message. They brought the heaven-shaking drum. It's enough to disrupt your melody. You won't be able to do any damage to them. Lu Outyin quickly said. I also don't need to do anything. The 7 demise snakes are enough. Right now, the deep mountains and steep ridges are the best location for the 7 demise snakes to ambush. Emperor Yi said indifferently. Tonight, I will bring the 7 demise snakes to the Gan mountain range. You are responsible for notifying everyone from the Xixia mountain range to the Gan mountain range. This place is divided into a battle zone. No one is allowed to enter the battle zone. This is to ensure that the ambush won't be leaked. Lu Outyin was immediately overjoyed. With the 7 demise snakes, they would definitely be able to catch the wolf cavalry off guard. The key point was that the 7 demise snakes could instantly poison an entire army. Even if the heaven-shaking drum could kill the 7 demise snakes, the 7 demise snakes would self-destruct, and a large amount of poisonous gas would mix into the air. The surrounding thousands of li would become a danger zone. The ambush officially started. Li Shui obviously didn't think that his fate would be so tragic. He was galloping at full speed towards the Gan mountain range. Chapter 576. In the middle of the night, Emperor Yi led countless 7 demise snakes, riding on the middle-level 7 demise celestial snake with the multicolored snake wrapped around his waist, heading straight for Mount Gan. The battle zone at night was deathly silent. Even the birds were under control. The Blade of Lulan was in charge of the outer perimeter, while Emperor Yi led the snakes to Mount Gan. Before daybreak, Mount Gan was occupied by the snakes. With the 12th rank 7 demise snake in charge, the mindless 7 demise snakes were actually able to set up an ambush. They all curled up behind the rocks obediently. Emperor Yi played the guqin and pacified countless 7 demise serpents. The ferocious beasts in the surroundings all submitted to him. All of them became food in the 7 demise serpents' stomachs. Only a few of the sacrificial level beasts remained by Emperor Ye's side. The birds in the sky were also killed by the god-slaying eagle. In order to ensure the success of the ambush, Emperor Yi was ruthless. The next morning, the air above Mount Gan was filled with poisonous gas. The birds did not fly, so it was exceptionally quiet. At this moment, the wolf cavalry was advancing rapidly under Li Shui's lead. After more than half a month, they had crossed the distance of a prefecture from the main battle zone, and arrived at the outer perimeter of Mount Gan in the evening. Li Shui was an experienced commander after all. The moment he entered the outer perimeter of Mount Gan, he ordered the army to stop advancing. He ordered the scouts to patrol Mount Gan in case they were ambushed. Mount Gan was rugged and difficult to traverse. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Once there was an ambush, the wolf cavalry would suffer heavy losses. The reason why Li Shui was able to become the commander of an elite troop from a commoner was because he had his own abilities. He relied on being careful and taking every step carefully. The scouts did their best, but their targets were all people. They did not pay much attention to the beasts. No matter how strong the beasts were, they could not withstand the attacks of the wolf cavalry. Moreover, the 7 demise snakes seemed to be hibernating now. They did not give off any signs of life. Only a few poisonous snakes roamed the mountains and were killed by the scouts. Emperor Yi had become one with the world and restrained his presence. Even if an extreme middle-level deity came personally, he might not be able to discover her existence. The 12th rank 7 demise snake was coiled up like a mountain rock. Its eyes were tightly shut, and it had become one with Mount Gan. Emperor Yi was standing beside it. When the scouts walked past the 7 demise snake, they did not realize that it was a giant snake. They even thought that it was a tall mountain. Time passed bit by bit, and the scout quickly returned the way he had come, reporting. Other than a few divine beasts and poisonous snakes, there are no traces of humans in Gan Mountain Ridge. Sir, you can rest assured and travel together. 3 batches of spies returned in a row and received the same answer. Li Shui trusted the spies he had trained very much. He said to the 3 major captains, "Let's set off at night and try to reach Xianyue County before tonight to capture Emperor Yi and clean up the battlefield behind us." "Yes, Commander." The 3 captains were all lower extreme Dao mighty figures. They were extremely powerful, and each of them led a large group. They rode on heavenly wolves that were like horses, and they charged into the depths of the Gan mountain ridge in unison. Boom, boom, boom. The mountain range trembled, and some beasts without intelligence screamed and fled in fear. The 12th rank 7 demise snake opened its eyes slightly, revealing a terrifying light. All of the 7 demise snakes had awakened, but they did not open their eyes. Instead, they waited for the wolf cavalry to enter the encirclement. Emperor Yi looked at the army approaching from afar. There was a total of 30,000 soldiers, and 4 heaven-shaking drums were pulled by heavenly wolves. More than 10 drummers were 3 meters tall, and they held drumsticks in their hands. The sound of the drums was enough to shatter the eardrums of the gods. "Let's get rid of the drummer first." Emperor Yi transmitted his voice softly. The 7 demise snakes did not reply. They were still lying on the side of the valley, and they could block the path in an instant. Li Shui held a spear in his hand and wore a battle robe. His eyes were dazzling as he rode on a giant heavenly wolf. He had already reached the 12th rank. At this moment he was still cautious. He narrowed his eyes as he looked at the valley. His heartbeat sped up, and he scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. He could not help but frown when he found many 7 demise snakes. Before entering the valley, Li Shui suddenly waved his hand and signaled for the army to stop. "Beat the drums. Attack the sides of the mountain." Li Shui was indifferent. He did not care whether these poisonous snakes would attack the army or not. He wanted to kill the threat in the cradle. Boom. The heaven-shaking drums were beaten by more than 10 men, and the sound of the drums shook the heavens. The low-grade 7 demise snakes were directly shattered by the sound of the drums. Blood sprayed out, and their mournful cries were especially ear-piercing. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 heaven-shaking drums exploded at the same time. The giants exploded with terrifying power, and their veins popped out. Countless poisonous snakes were killed by the sound of the drums before they could even awaken. The surrounding rocks smashed down continuously, and the mountain collapsed. One could see the power of the heaven-shaking drums. The wolf army blocked their consciousness to avoid being attacked by the heaven-shaking drums. The heavenly wolves' divine sense and senses were all sealed, so they could ignore the attacks of the heaven-shaking drums. Roar. The 12th rank 7 demise snakes were enraged. They roared and spat out poisonous gas that covered 100 miles, drowning the wolf army. Even Yi Qinghan with his 5 elements Dao body could not withstand the poison of the 7 demise snakes, let alone these ordinary gods. Boom. A large number of the wolf army collapsed. They fainted without any warning, and their faces were pale. Even the heavenly wolves were poisoned to the ground. All the 7 demise snakes moved, and they charged madly at the group of heavenly wolves. Li Shui was shocked. He was the first to bear the brunt of the 12th rank 7 demise snakes' attack. Even if he held his breath, he could not stop the poisonous gas from invading his body. He was poisoned in an instant. He realized that his divine power could not stop the poisonous gas from corroding his godhead and soul. He immediately roared, "Charge out with me." Boom. What answered him was the 12th rank 7 demise snake's huge tail. Even the heavenly wolves were sent flying by the huge tail, and they smashed into the side of the mountain. The heavenly wolves were also 12th rank, and they were not poisoned to death. However, their battle prowess was reduced by more than half. They were almost blown apart by the huge tail. Roar. The heavenly wolves roared in anger. They realized that the poisonous gas was increasing. Countless poisonous snakes self-exploded, spewing out large amounts of poisonous liquid. The entire Gan mountain ridge was covered in a colorful miasma. Emperor Yi was surrounded by the multicolored snakes, and the poisonous gas could not get close to him. He watched as the wolf cavalry was surrounded by countless poisonous snakes. Some of the priests were poisoned to death, and they were instantly devoured by the 7 demise snakes. The heavenly wolves could not escape this fate. Emperor Yi felt a pang of pain. These heavenly wolves could be used to form her own wolf cavalry. Unfortunately, wherever the 7 demise snakes passed, not even white bones were left. Everyone's bones had turned black. Roar. The 12th rank 7 demise snake's poisonous gas was too strong. The priests of the same rank could not block the poisonous gas. The huge tail was dozens of feet long, and it directly disrupted the wolf cavalry's deployment, making it impossible for them to form an attack. The heaven-shaking drum was still being struck by the giant. The 7 demise snakes suffered heavy casualties, and they kept exploding. Emperor Yi suddenly played a divine tune, which tore through the shackles and blasted into the giant's consciousness. However, the giant was not affected at all. He kept dancing the drumsticks, and the heaven-shaking drum's sound echoed through the mountains and rivers. Anyone who heard it within 1,000 miles felt their blood boil. It was even more controlling than the sound of a zither. Some of the weaker ones immediately self-exploded upon hearing it. They did not even have the chance to resist. Kill the drummer. Keep the heaven-shaking drum. Emperor Yi shouted at the 12th rank 7 demise snake. Chapter 577. Roar. The 12th rank 7 demise snake spat out a mouthful of blood. At such a close distance, it drowned the army of 30,000, and more than half of them fell down instantly. Shio shio shio. Hiss hiss hiss. Countless 7 demise snakes drowned the wolf cavalry. Wherever they passed, there were no corpses left. Screams filled the air. The fearsome wolf cavalry encountered countless venomous snakes, and they couldn't resist at all. There were too many 7 demise snakes, so many that they couldn't be counted. In addition to the venom, those bitten by the 7 demise snakes almost fainted on the spot. Even their godheads couldn't escape. Li Shui crawled out of the mountain, his eyes red. The wolf cavalry that he relied on actually died in the hands of a group of venomous snakes. 7 demise snakes. Li Shui roared. He raised his head and roared, rushing madly toward the 12th rank 7 demise snakes. Die. Li Shui pierced through the void with his spear, destroying the order. The 7 demise snakes swung their huge tails at Li Shui. The huge tails swept across 1,000 miles, and even the mountains were uprooted. Dong dong dong. Those giants were still beating the drums. The poisonous gas didn't seem to have any effect on them. Countless venomous snakes crawled all over their bodies. No matter how the snakes bit them, they didn't move. They were like puppets, without vitality and flesh. Emperor Yi frowned. The sound of the sky-shaking drum covered her music, causing her qi and blood to be a little sluggish. At least tens of thousands of 7 demise snakes died, and the surrounding 1,000 miles were drowned in the 7 demise poison. If it wasn't for the 7 demise grass in her mouth, she would have died by now. 30,000 soldiers and 30,000 sky wolves were all poisoned to the ground. Only Li Shui and the 7 or 8 giants were left holding on bitterly. Go kill these giants. Emperor, Yi said to the colorful snake. The colorful snake hesitated. It wasn't afraid of the giants, but it was afraid that Emperor Yi couldn't protect himself. After all, her soul was one with the world, and she didn't have a strong body. Once someone sneaked an attack, Emperor Yi would have a hard time defending himself. It's okay. I have the god-slaying eagle. I can protect myself. Emperor Yi understood the colorful snake's meaning, and quickly said, Xiao. The multicolored snake was like a bolt of lightning as it pounced towards the heaven-shaking drum. It let out a mournful roar that resonated with the heaven-shaking drum. Then it bit off a giant's throat and dug into his body, destroying his life force in an unbridled manner. A moment later, one of the giants fell, and was quickly devoured by the 7 demise snakes. The colorful snake continued to pounce on the second, and the third 7 or 8 giants fell one after another. They seemed to have no soul, and they did not know how to attack or defend. They only knew how to beat the drum. They killed countless 7 demise snakes, but in the end, they were all killed by the multicolored snake. Without the heaven-shaking drum, the 7 demise snakes pounced from afar. The ground was littered with corpses, sacrificial deities, and heavenly wolves. They were all devoured. The 7 demise serpents could not devour godhoods, and only a few of them could. There were over 20,000 godhoods left on the ground. Emperor Yi picked them all up and cleaned them. He found that the souls inside the godheads had all been poisoned to death. Not a single one was left. The wolf cavalry that struck fear in people's hearts had been completely wiped out. In this battle, only a large number of 7 demise snakes had died, but they had obtained over 20,000 godhoods. There were even 7 or 8 7 demise snakes that had evolved to the 11th stage. Li Shui was not a match for the 12th stage 7 demise snake at all. His mount, Heavenly Wolf, had been devoured by the snake. The 12th stage 7 demise snake roared excitedly. It seemed to be on the verge of a breakthrough. It bared its fangs, and a mouthful of poisonous gas rushed towards Li Shui's face. Li Shui collapsed with a loud bang. The 7 demise snake had devoured Li Shui in the last mouthful. Not even his godhood was left behind. Emperor Yi did not feel that it was a pity. After all, this was his contribution. Bring them back. I will burn all these corpses. Emperor Yi moved his fingertip, and a trace of fire origin appeared on his fingertip. The 7 demise snakes had devoured all the flesh and blood, but the bones were still there, emitting a foul stench. Although the 7 demise snakes had suffered heavy casualties, those that survived had all broken through. They had devoured over 30,000 wolf cavalry and heavenly wolves. With so much flesh and blood, it was enough for them to evolve. The 12th stage 7 demise snake roared. It led the 7 demise army and charged toward Xixia Mountain before the sky brightened. Emperor Yi set the Gan Mountain ridge ablaze, and the flames burned the sky. At noon the next day, the Gan Mountain ridge fire was extinguished. However, the news had spread to the main battle area. Gong Yang Motian looked at the news sent by the spy and trembled all over. How is this possible? 30,000 wolf cavalry were annihilated before they even reached the enemy's lair. Who sent this news? Gong Yang Motian roared. The spy trembled all over, not daring to raise his head. He said in a trembling voice, "My lord, the subordinate reported that Commander Li Shui disappeared as soon as he arrived at the Gan Mountain Ridge. The next day, someone took the risk to enter the Gan Mountain Ridge to investigate, but they did not come out. Someone observed from afar, and found that the poisonous gas filled the sky. Within 100 li, there was no sign of life. Go and investigate again." You dare to fool me without seeing the corpses? Are you tired of living? Gong Yang Motian threw out the iron scroll in his hand and reprimanded angrily. Lu Zhantian and the others gathered in the main tent. The manor head's face was full of excitement as he looked at the news sent by the spy. His body could not stop trembling. Ha ha ha. She is indeed worthy of being chosen by that person. With the strength of a single person, he killed an army of 100,000. Now Li Shui's 30,000 elite wolf riders have disappeared without a trace. That old fox Gong Yang must be furious. I'm guessing that once he confirms the news, he will definitely send his main force to take revenge. Then the pressure on us will be greatly reduced. The manor head held the iron scroll and said excitedly, Emperor Yi is indeed a rare heavenly soul godhead. With her, we may be able to open up a second battlefield and attract all the troops of Gongyang Prefecture. The chief steward was also full of smiles as he bowed and said, Men. He would give Fairy Empress Yi as many divine crystals as she wanted. Tell her that as long as she can resist the attack of Gongyang Prefecture, I will rule the divine cleansing prefecture with her. The manor head said in a deep voice. Lu Zhantian frowned. Emperor, Yi was only a lesser god. No matter how strong she was only equivalent to a medium god. How could she resist the attack of Gongyang Prefecture? If we send all the elites of Gongyang Prefecture over, Guangzhong will definitely not be able to resist. My lord, please reconsider. Lu Zhantian said in a deep voice. I don't need Guangzhong to win. I only need Gongyang Prefecture to suffer great losses. Even if it can drag on for half a year, I will return to Guangzhong after I deal with army-shattering prefecture. The manor head said indifferently. Sure enough, 3 days later, Mu Manor sent 10 million low-grade divine crystals, 1 million mid-grade divine crystals, 3,000 divine crystals, 100,000 divine weapons, and several healing pills. It was enough for Guangzhong to build an army of 100,000. With this amount of money, Xia Qiyue began to build the dragon cavalry. She also pulled Di Longtian over from Blade of Lulan and made him the commander of the dragon cavalry. He was the true dragon cavalry, With him, the dragon cavalry would be justified. Emperor Yi also nodded in agreement. Lu Outyin was extremely helpless. Di Longtian was the best candidate to be the vanguard. He was very reluctant to let Xia Qiyue pull him away. The 11th rank 7 demise snake had 8 heads, and became the mounts of the 8 captains. However, no one dared to ride the 12th rank divine snake, nor did it allow anyone to ride it. With 9 dragon riders overseeing the situation, the dragon cavalry had recruited 100,000 people in a short 10 days. Taking advantage of the fact that Gongyang Prefecture had yet to react, the two armies began the cruelest training. It was normal for people to die. Chapter 578. After half a month, the spies finally found evidence to prove that the wolf army had been completely annihilated. Even the commander, Li Shui, had died in the Gan Mountain Ridge. The young commander, Gongyang Matian, personally led 300,000 troops. Even the trump card prefecture divine army was transferred to the Black Moon County. As soon as Gongyang Matian left, the Mushin residents used the spies in the Black Moon County to inform the Emperor Yi, and requested him to delay Gongyang Matian for a month. Emperor Yi was silent. 300,000 troops, 30 sky-shaking drums, 50,000 trump card prefecture divine army. Such an army was enough to break through a 12th grade sect. Even if the 10 great sects of the Mushin residents joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to stop such a force. Emperor Yi gathered all the experts of the insane sect. Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue even let go of the training of the army and handed over the matters to Luo Jie and Di Longtian. All of them rushed to the meeting hall. Through spies, the chief of the Mu clan sent all the information about Gongyang Matian and the combat power of the army of 300,000 to Ren Huangyi. Ren Huangyi passed it on to everyone. Everyone was silent. The army of Gongyang Prefecture could only be stopped by the entire force of one prefecture. It was unrealistic to count on the crazy sect. Our 200,000 troops can only be considered as a third-rate army at most. They are slightly better than a mixed army. Obviously, they can't stop the attack of Gongyang Manor's main force. Lu Outyin said with certainty. That's right. No matter how many vanguards we have, no matter how strong our individual soldiers are, it's impossible to stop the attack of Gongyang Manor. Mu Manor directly released so many troops, they clearly want to take our lives. Xia Qiyue said coldly. The Manor Lord also told me the reason. They have no choice but to release 60% of Gongyang Manor's army. Otherwise, they won't be able to withstand the joint attack of the two manors. At most, they will be defeated in 3 to 5 days. At that time, the two manors will defeat the Mu Manor's army. Sooner or later, they will join forces to invade our territory. Emperor Yi shook his head. Now we can only think of a way to stop them and not blame the Mu Manor. The Mu Manor has already done their best. At least 40% of the army. They are prepared to fight to the death. Emperor Yi explained. I really don't understand why the Sanqing Divine Kingdom would sit by and do nothing. Even if they sent a few experts to help the Mu clan secretly, we wouldn't have to work so hard. Lu Outyin couldn't understand the current situation. How could they just give up on a majestic clan just like that? The benefits of the divine nations weren't something they could see clearly. At this moment, even the Manor Lord didn't understand why the 3 pure divine nations didn't even say anything to stop the joint attack of the 2 powerful manors. Just like that, the Mushin estate was inexplicably abandoned. Xia Qiyue was silent for a moment. She opened the map, thought for a moment, and said in a deep voice, Since there is no other way, we can only fight to the death. This Gan mountain range is the best place to defend. Even if we can't beat them back, we can at least hold on for a month. At that time, Brother Yi might return. Even with the Gan mountain ridge as a barrier, we won't be able to last a month. Our army will be annihilated in 3 days at most. Lu Outyin looked at the information sent by the martial housemaster and shook his head. The other side had 30 heaven-shaking drums, 300,000 soldiers, and 50,000 aces. This was equivalent to more than 200,000 priests. Plus the priests in the army, the total was less than 30,000. They weren't on the same level at all. Let's try. We have no way out. If we run now, we can escape to the endless plains. However, if the other side doesn't hesitate to send priests to disturb the small plains, the endless plains will collapse instantly. Countless creatures will die because of us. Emperor Yi clenched his fist and said, "We have 3 heaven-shaking drums. Let's try to unleash the power of 30 of them. Who can beat the drums?" Emperor Yi stared at the heroes and asked in a deep voice. "I'll do it." Nye Tian put down the giant axe. The muscles all over his body bulged. His terrifying aura was no less than that of a top war reverend. "I also need 2 people with top-notch physical bodies." Emperor Yi stood up and glanced at the heroes. With these 3 heaven-shaking drums, she had a chance to unleash the power of 30 heaven-shaking drums. Zetian shook his neck and clenched his iron fist. The Qilin bloodline in his body erupted. His aura was terrifying. "Leave one to me. We still lack a top-notch physical body cultivator." Emperor Yi asked again. The others fell silent. They had all tried to beat the heaven-shaking drum. Many people couldn't even beat it. The sound of the drum could shatter their bodies. Such a divine weapon wasn't something that ordinary people could control. At this moment, a spy suddenly came to report from outside the meeting hall. "Report. A middle-aged man has come from outside the Western Canyon Mountain. His whole body is emitting golden light. Even his eyes are golden. He says his name is Stan Huangtian. He's an old friend of the Kuang sect. He's here to help the Kuang sect." Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Stan Huangtian to come. He was a true physical body cultivator. Even if his physical body was slightly weaker than Yi Qinghan's, he was still much stronger than Nye Tian and Zetian. "Let him in," Emperor Yi immediately said. Soon, Stan Huangtian stepped into the meeting hall. He glanced at everyone and looked at Stan Wuxia. He took a deep breath and took the initiative to say, "I'm from the endless plains after all. I'll contribute to this battle." Although he had a bad temper, his heart didn't change. He was still doing it for the people of the endless plains. Although he was too overbearing and ruthless, he still saw Wuxia as his own son. Even if that bloodline was replaced, it couldn't erase the fact that the soul was passed down. Patriarch. The corner of Stan Wuxia's mouth twitched. He didn't know what to say. I'm not doing this for you. Our relationship is over." Stan Huangtian was stubborn. He wasn't willing to admit his thoughts. "Senior, thank you for letting bygones be bygones. How about you control the last heaven-shaking drum?" Emperor Yi said with a bow. "All right," Stan Huangtian replied without hesitation. "Then let's set out. We'll use the Gan Mountain Range as our base and block them north of the Gan Mountain Range. If they want to break through the Gan Mountain Range, I'll cripple them." Emperor Yi clenched his fist and was the first to step out of the meeting hall. The 2 armies set out for the Gan Mountain Range. The army of 200,000 arranged their troops in formation and defended the Gan Mountain Range. They were 3 to 5 days ahead of Gongyang Matian's army. They just happened to have time to set up the defensive fortifications. "Little Jia, dig out the Gan Mountain Range from the ground. I want them to be unable to fly over the Gan Mountain Range. I want them to use their lives to fill up the dangerous ravine," Emperor Yi said to Little Jia. Little Jia was a pangolin. Now that he had the aura of his ancestor, he would rather die to tear off a layer of the enemy's skin. Even if he knew that he was facing an enemy hundreds of times stronger, he had no intention of retreating. "Leave it to me." Little Jia patted his chest and directly transformed into his original form. The mountain rocks weren't an obstacle to him at all. He directly sank into the ground. A huge pit was dug out from the ground. The surface was still the same. Once it collapsed, it would be enough to drown an army of tens of thousands. "Inject the entire pit with poisonous gas. I want the enemies who fall into the ravine to be destroyed instantly." Emperor Yi had become ruthless at this moment. He killed without batting an eyelid. "Little Golden Crow, remember, once they fall into the trap, you must immediately spit out fire and cover the top. Don't let them fly out of the trap," Emperor Yi instructed. Little Golden Crow nodded and promised that he would not let any of the enemy's vanguard escape. The people of the insane sect were setting up traps throughout the night. However, from above, no one knew that the ground had been hollowed out by the pangolin and filled with poisonous gas by the 7 demise snakes. An army of 30,000 archers equipped with deicide crossbows. The arrows were soaked in poisonous liquid. Once they touched blood, they would kill. Even the divinity couldn't escape. A total of 300,000 arrows. Although it wasn't a lot, it was enough to kill tens of thousands of the main forces. It all depended on whether Gongyang Matian was willing to use human lives to consume the arrows. At this moment, Gongyang Matian was leading the army to crush the insane sect at all costs. He wanted to avenge Li Shui. The army of 300,000 was invincible. Wherever they passed, everything was forcibly flattened. They did not take prisoners, even children were not spared. They slaughtered hundreds of thousands of ordinary emperor-level masters. Whether it was the adventurers or the scattered immortal guards of the city, none were spared. It was extremely cruel. Many people were scared out of their wits and began to rush towards the Guangzong's territory. Even if they knew that they would die, they still wanted to join forces with the Guangzong. At least it would not be shameful if they died on the battlefield. However, Lu Outyan and Xia Qiue tried their best to stop these people from coming through the Gan mountain ridge. First of all, they were not sure of the true identity of these people. More importantly, they were suspicious of their purpose. They forced them to take a detour into the territory of the insane sect. Once they took a detour, it would take at least a month to reach the rear of the army. Even if the other party was an enemy, it wouldn't affect the battle situation. Emperor Yi nodded. He didn't want to waste time to test these people. He asked them to take a detour around the Gan mountain ridge. This move indeed rejected many spies and unknown existences. Those people had no choice but to return the way they came. Those adventurers who really wanted to join the war gritted their teeth and took a detour, rushing towards the territory of the insane sect. 3 days later, the army of 300,000 under the leadership of Gongyang Matian arrived at the Gan mountain ridge. They were unstoppable. They began to attack the heart of the army, asking Emperor Yi to surrender. They even killed tens of thousands of captives to break the morale of the army. However, the more Gongyang Matian acted like this, the more the army's fighting spirit was stimulated. Gongyang Wanluan's 30,000 surrendered soldiers were now at the forefront. If there was any movement, they would be slaughtered by the 7 demise snakes. They didn't dare to rebel. They didn't dare to utter a word. Remember, you are now the blades of Lulan. If someone wants to kill you, I will personally save you. However, if you dare to rebel, I will not show mercy. Lu Outyan said in a deep voice. We pledge our loyalty to Commander Lu. The outer disciples of the insane sect took the opportunity to shout, trying to stabilize the morale of the army. Sure enough, after such a shout, the hearts of the rebels were finally stabilized. They joined the army to make a living. Most of them were adventurers. They had no background, no parents. If they joined the Blades of Lulan, they would at least be treated as a human by the commander. If they performed meritorious deeds, they would be promoted and obtain godhood. It was much better than following the Gongyang prefecture. We pledge our loyalty to Commander Lu. The army shouted. The 30,000 rebels also followed suit. At this moment, their faces were flushed red with passion. The Blades of Lulan gave them a sense of belonging. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Gongyang Matian's mouth. He personally donned his armor and held his spear. He walked forward and stared at Ren Huangyi. There was some light in his eyes as he asked in a low voice. You are Ren Huangyi, that expert of the Guqin? That's right. I am. Emperor Yi replied coldly. Do you know the consequences of going against me? Gongyang Matian asked in a hoarse voice. Emperor Yi stepped forward with his musical instrument. The multicolored snake wrapped around his waist. He glared at Gongyang Matian and replied coldly. I don't know the consequences of going against you. However, I know that it was you who went against my insane sect first. You should be prepared to die. Chapter 579. In the Gan mountain range, the miasma covered the sky and the sun. Even the gods couldn't see beyond 1,000 meters. Gongyang Matian stood on top of the trap. Relying on his cultivation, he personally came to kill them. The people of the insane sect did not know much about Gongyang Matian, but the people who were born and raised here knew him very well. The only word that could be used to describe him was terrifying. With his strength alone, he was able to suppress the 200,000 soldiers to the point that they did not even dare to raise their heads. Emperor Ye's jade-like hands gently patted the zither frame as he stared at Gongyang Matian. His mind was in turmoil as he pondered whether or not he should make the first move to kill off their young commander Gongyang Matian and destroy the morale of the enemy army. The trap could only be used once. If he killed Gongyang Matian, he couldn't kill the tens of thousands of people in the vanguard army. If he chose to kill a large army, he couldn't kill Gongyang Matian. Emperor Yi stared at Gongyang Matian with his eyes wide open. Gongyang Matian was also looking at Renhuang Yi. The corners of his mouth curled into a strange smile. Emperor Yi, submit to this commander. From now on you are only below one person and above millions. I will let bygones be bygones about you killing Li Shui. Gongyang Matian said lightly. Submit? Are you worthy? The corner of Emperor Ye's mouth twitched as he looked at Gongyang Matian's self-righteous and infuriating appearance. His murderous intent grew stronger and stronger. As long as she moved, Nye Tian, Stan Huangtian, and the others would sound the sky-shaking drum and collapse the rock stratum. The 12th rank 7 Ultimate Serpent's thunderbolt would smash her into a trap, and a famous general of a generation would die tragically under the poisonous gas. Whether I am worthy or not, the world knows. Do you think you can stop me with just your 200,000 soldiers? How can 30,000 gods block my 200,000 gods? Even if your Mu clan's Lu Zhantian personally leads 500,000 soldiers to block my path, they can't stop me 3 times. Do you have the heart to let these 200,000 people die without a burial place? Gongyang Matian asked lightly. Who doesn't know how to brag? I even said that if I lead 30,000 soldiers, you won't be able to stop me with 300,000. Do you believe me? Di Longtian said disdainfully. Gongyang Matian frowned and looked at Di Longtian coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Ordinary gods wouldn't be able to withstand this gaze. It was enough to kill the souls of ordinary gods. However, Di Longtian wasn't affected in the slightest. Instead, he glared back at him. Draconic might surged as he gripped his spear and angrily pointed it at Gongyang Matian. He loudly shouted, "The commander of the Dragon Riders, Di Longtian, is here. Little thief, don't be arrogant." The originally low morale of the army was actually shaken awake by Di Longtian's shout. This was especially true for the Dragon Riders, who actually emitted a boundless battle intent. Dragon Knight. Dragon Riders. The 8 great captains raised their spears and roared angrily. Driving their imposing manner, they pressed down on Gongyang Matian. Dragon Knight. Dragon Knight. Dragon Knight. 100,000 dragon cavalry roared, bringing with them a heaven-overflowing aura that shook the 9 heavens. You don't know the difference between life and death. Gongyang Matian gave a muffled groan. He flicked his sleeves and retreated, waiting for the fog to disperse and for daylight to descend. The Gongyang Prefecture's army set up camp outside the Gon Mountain Ridge. Gongyang Matian gathered the various army supervisors to discuss countermeasures. He requested that they take down the Kuang sect as quickly as possible and capture Emperor Yi alive. My request isn't high. We will attack at noon tomorrow, suppress the enemy within 6 hours, and capture Emperor Yi alive. Can you do it? Gongyang Matian coldly asked. We will definitely complete the mission. Young commander, don't worry. The 3 army supervisors solemnly promised. There were a total of 3 armies. The Prefecture God Army was the trump card of the elites, and was even stronger than the Wolf Army. There were a total of 50,000 people. The Matian Guards were Gongyang Matian's personal guards. There were a total of 100,000 people. The remaining army was the main force of the Gongyang Prefecture, the East Pacifying Army. There were a total of 150,000 people. The head of the Prefecture God Army was Gongyang Matian's younger brother, Gongyang Zhanlong. The head of the Matian Guards was called Ing Dong. He was saved by Gongyang Matian on the battlefield, and had been loyal ever since. When he led the Matian Guards to protect young commander Gongyang Matian, they were even more ferocious than the Prefecture God Army. The head of the East Pacifying Army was the County God Duanjingmu. These 3 were all famous commanders. Any one of them could unify an area and become an overlord. Their fame in the army was not inferior to Lu Zhantian's. Moreover, they were all experts of the older generation. Their combat experience was even stronger than Lu Zhantian's. The three of them were extremely confident. In their opinion, any one of them could lead their own army and wipe out the 200,000 soldiers of the Kuang sect. There was no need for the three armies to attack together. I want a quick battle, so the Prefecture God army will be like a sharp knife. We will tear apart their defenses and take down the cliff that they occupy. As long as we take down the cliff, the 200,000 soldiers will be meat in our mouths. They will be like lambs to a pack of wolves. They won't be able to withstand a single blow. Gong Yongmatian stared at the Gan mountain ridge and drew a simple map. He directly inserted his spear into the cliff and said coldly, "Take down the cliff. Kill all the ordinary soldiers. Don't take any prisoners. However, capture Emperor Yi alive. Capture the people of the Kuang sect alive if you can. If you can't, kill them all." The three heads had a strange smile on their faces. They bowed and said, "Don't worry, young commander. We will not harm Emperor Yi." Gong Yongmatian put his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "That's for the best. When we attack tomorrow, I want you to use all your strength. I will personally beat the drum. I hope you won't disappoint me." At this moment, the Kuang sect's side was carefully defending, afraid of being ambushed. However, Gong Yongmatian was too confident. He believed that there was no need for a sneak attack at night. When dawn came and the fog dispersed, it would take at most 6 hours to take down the Gan mountain ridge and kill all the people of the Kuang sect. That night, the people of the Kuang sect were unusually tired. However, the people of the Kuang sect were in their best condition. The sky gradually brightened. The time of the battle was getting closer and closer. The morale of the dragon cavalry and Lolan's blade became more and more stable. Since they knew that they would die, they might as well fight to their heart's content. "Drink a bowl of wine to strengthen our spirit." Lu Outyin raised his bowl and drank a big mouthful of wine. He faced Lolan's blade and said in a low voice, "As the commander, I will either give you glory and wealth or die with you on the battlefield. Fight with me today. Are you afraid?" "No. We pledge our lives to Lolan's blade." The army roared. Which commander in the world dared to say that they would either give glory and wealth or die together on the battlefield? The morale of the dragon cavalry was mobilized by Di Longtian. With Lu Outyin and Lolan's blade, their morale soared to the heavens. Time slowly passed. The scorching sun tore through the fog. The grass and trees of the Gan mountain ridge appeared in everyone's sight. Dong dong dong. They could even hear the beating of their hearts clearly. Suddenly, a low guqin sound came from the forest. The atmosphere became more and more solemn and urgent. It stirred up the blood of the army and made their blood boil. Emperor Yi sat on the back of the god-slaying eagle and played a celestial tune to calm the tension of the army. The pleasant guqin sound was mesmerizing. Emperor Yi pressed down on the strings of the guqin with one hand and suppressed the guqin sound to the lowest level. However, it traveled very far. When it traveled far, the guqin sound became another kind of aura that suppressed people's souls. Even the emotions of the gods were suppressed. The morale of the army was suppressed. Boom boom boom. Gong Yongmatian stepped onto the war chariot. He held the drumstick and smashed the sky-shaking drum. Instantly, the morale of the army rose. The sound of the drum soared into the sky and broke the forest. It pressed down on Emperor Yi. The sound of the drum swept across the sky above Emperor Yi and into Lolan's blade and dragon cavalry. The army coughed out blood and flew backward. Guqin. Emperor Yi stood up and turned into the 10-light divine guqin. It blossomed with extraordinary splendor. Even the god-slaying eagle was like a divine emperor. It flapped its wings and raised mountains and rivers. Before the army even moved, Emperor Yi and Gong Yongmatian had already started fighting. They both wanted to raise the morale of their own army and suppress the morale of the other. The sound of the guqin rose and interweaved with the sound of the sky-shaking drum. They rose and fell continuously. Gong Yongmatian's veins popped out, and he exploded with all his strength. The biggest sky-shaking drum was almost pierced through by him. The sound of the drum pierced through time and space and rushed towards Emperor Yi. He wanted to crush her spirit and make her submit. However, he had underestimated Emperor Yi. Emperor Yi's white hair flew up. His jade fingers were dripping with blood as he frantically plucked the strings. The sound of the guqin filled the sky and rushed into the clouds along with the sound of the drum. Sing sing sing. Boom boom boom. The sound of the guqin and the drum collided continuously. Every sound was like a sudden clap of thunder that struck their hearts. The faces of Lulan's blade and the dragon cavalry turned pale. This was even after Emperor Yi blocked most of the attacks. Otherwise, the sound of the drum alone would be able to kill a large number of soldiers. The sound of the guqin became more and more violent and sharp. It was like a sharp knife that pierced into the souls of the gods. It was as if the heart was being gouged out, causing the prefecture god army at the front to frown. Boom. Sand and stones flew in the middle of the Gan mountain ridge. The sound of the guqin and the drum were like real divine weapons. They collided with each other and cut into the mountains on both sides. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Emperor Ye's face was pale. Blood flowed out of her 7 orifices. The fresh flesh of her 5 fingers was cut open by the strings, revealing the white bones. However, she could not retreat. If she did, a large number of soldiers behind her would die. Gong Yang Matian danced with the drumsticks. His clothes exploded. His aura was at its peak. However, the more he struck, the more tired he became. Every movement took a lot of energy. However, he did not want to retreat. Once he did, the morale of the army would decline and the impact would be great. The commander had already lost. Did he still expect the soldiers to win? The strength used to strike the heaven-shaking drum was far more than Emperor Yi using the divine guqin. Moreover, Emperor Yi had 2 godhoods. One was the heavenly soul godhood, and the other was the zither Dao godhood. The amount of soul energy and divine power used was at most 1/10 of Gong Yang Matian's. Therefore, with her lower realm, Gong Yang Matian was almost forced to admit defeat. Emperor Yi gritted his teeth and kept changing songs. From the heaven attacking song to the burial emperor song, then to the killing god song. The guqin song went from high-pitched to low-pitched, from austere to violent. Both armies were waiting. Once either one of them was defeated, the curtains to the war would open. However, the outcome would not change. It would definitely be the prefecture god army of Gongyang that attacked first. In the end, Gongyang Matian could not hold on any longer. He did not want to waste any more time with Emperor Yi. He used his strongest battle power and directly struck the heaven-shaking drum. The tragic sound turned into a long spear that pierced towards Emperor Ye's body. Whoosh! The long spear tore through time and space. Moreover, it was in a virtual state. Only Emperor Yi could sense it. He could not help but change his expression. He pulled the 9 strings of the guqin and poured out his divine power. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 9 sharp arrows rushed out and merged into one in an instant. They turned into a giant arrow and rushed towards the long spear that Gongyang Matian had transformed into. Boom! The two collided. The long spear was unstoppable. It pierced through the giant arrow and arrived in front of Emperor Yi. Screech! Puchi! The god-slaying eagle used its body to block the spear. It let out a shrill cry, but it helped Emperor Yi block the fatal blow. Emperor Ye's body was sent flying by the god-slaying eagle. He crashed into the crowd and was caught by Medusa. Bang! Gongyang Matian directly knelt on the chariot. He panted heavily and shouted in a low voice, "Attack, kill without mercy." Chapter 580. In front of the sword steel in the shaman god's tomb, Yi Qinghan suddenly drew his sword and carved 3 sword scars on the sword steel. Hum! 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 Sword beams flashed and sword scars appeared, but just as Yi Qinghan thought he had passed, the sword steel automatically healed as though it had never been attacked. Yi Qinghan frowned. He did not expect the sword steel to heal on its own. It was a self-healing defensive divine artifact. To leave a mark on the sword steel, one had to be extremely fast and leave an irreparable injury on the sword steel. It was the same as attacking an enemy. Once the sword was drawn, the wound would never heal until the enemy died of blood loss. Only by doing this could one be considered to have passed. Yi Qinghan stood while hugging his sword. His fingertips tapped on the sword hilt as he brewed his sword aura. He was not used to the sword in his hand, and felt that the sword would break if he exerted any force. His talent in the sword was much worse than Gu Qingyu and the rest. Boom. Yi Qinghan drew his sword again, and used all his strength to slash out 3 sword beams. The divine sword broke when it touched the sword steel, leaving sword scars that could not be healed for a long time. Whoosh! A divine light flashed, and the sword steel actually split into 2. It split from the middle, revealing a passageway behind it. However, the passageway was still blocked. It was an identical steel, but there was no longer a sword mark on the steel, but a palm print. Yi Qinghan walked over with the divine bird, and pressed his right hand into the palm print. The size was just right, but the steel did not react at all. Yi Qinghan activated the power of his bloodline, and poured the 5 elements into the steel. This was the shaman god's tomb. Even if there was an inheritance, it would be left to the shaman race. Yi Qinghan did not lack the shaman race's bloodline. He also had the 5 elements Dao body, which was the highest level of the shaman race. The steel was activated by the 5 elements and the shaman race's bloodline. It immediately shone brightly and took Yi Qinghan away. Yi Qinghan only felt his eyes brighten. There was actually a completely different world inside the tomb. It was like a paradise on earth. Divine flowers swayed and green willows swayed. Every single one of the flowers and plants had taken human form, possessing intelligence and spirituality. Time and space seemed to be restricted here. At the very least, Yi Qinghan could not feel the passage of time. No matter how much the outside world had changed, this place was still as beautiful as ever. There were mountains and rivers in front of him. The valley was lush and verdant, decorated with tens of thousands of flowers, and filled with spiritual energy. However, there was a coffin made of green wood. It was unknown how long it had been there, but there was an afterimage beside the coffin. It had no will or soul. When it saw Yi Qinghan enter, it only glanced at Yi Qinghan. This glance made Yi Qinghan feel as if he had fallen into an icy cavern. It was as if a single strand of his will could kill him. However, the afterimage did not seem to care about Yi Qinghan. It was as if it was looking at an ordinary bird. Is he dead or alive? The divine bird asked softly. Yi Qinghan shook his head and hurriedly turned away. He did not want to meet the eyes of the afterimage. Those eyes were too frightening. His cultivation level might be even more frightening than the 9 Serenities Masters. A descendant of the witch tribe has come to pay respects to our ancestors. Just as Yi Qinghan was about to leave, a sorrowful voice exploded in Yi Qinghan's consciousness. Yi Qinghan's body trembled. He looked at the afterimage and realized that it was not him who had said those words. It seemed to have come from the coffin. He could not help but feel his hair stand on end. The divine bird even spread its wings, its white feathers standing on end. The 3rd sorcerer god. Is he really an eternal existence? Yi Qinghan did not understand that level of existence. How many tens of thousands of years had it been? Millions of years, or even tens of millions of years. The other party could still sense his arrival. It was simply unbelievable. However, Yi Qinghan still walked in front of the green coffin and slowly knelt down. He said respectfully, "Junior Yi Qinghan greets the 3rd sorcerer god." The coffin did not respond. However, the afterimage stared at him, causing his hair to stand on end. He did not dare to move. Does the sorcerer tribe still exist? The sorrowful voice sounded again. It was filled with sorrow and despair. Yi Qinghan knelt respectfully in front of the coffin and replied in a low voice, "There are not many sorcerer tribe left. They have completely fallen. All the ancient sorcerer mystic techniques have been lost, let alone the ancient sorcerer techniques. Emperor Yu is in power. I am useless. I have no successor. How sorrowful." Yi Qinghan fell silent. It seemed like the old man in front of him was really as the 9 Serenities Master had said. He was the 3rd sorcerer god. The sorcerer god of the past could summon the wind and rain, change yin and yang, chase the wind and chase the sun, and create things and be reborn. However, he had still turned into a wisp of a departed soul. He had cultivated for millions of years, and was buried in a single day. Are you willing to strengthen the sorcerer tribe, and restore the glory of the sorcerer god? Boom. The lid of the coffin opened automatically. A withered corpse stood up. He was emaciated, without a trace of flesh. His eye sockets were so deep that no one dared to look at him directly. Yi Qinghan was sure that the third sorcerer god was not dead. This was definitely not the behavior of a dead person. I am willing to lead the sorcerer tribe back to the peak. Yi Qinghan did not dare to raise his head. The third sorcerer god was too powerful. He was so powerful that it was beyond his imagination. He believed that as long as the sorcerer god wanted to, he could cut off the middle plane with just a stretch of his hand. It is also a fortuitous opportunity for you to be able to come here. I will bestow upon you a sorcerer technique. If you can cultivate it to the great mastery realm and unify this middle plane, I will bestow upon you an even more powerful sorcerer technique. I will give you the opportunity to conquer the upper plane and let you witness the legends of the desolate era. The third sorcerer god said in a low voice as he looked down at Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan did not reply. He waited for the third sorcerer god to continue speaking. Sure enough, a metal scroll and a palm-sized seal appeared in the third sorcerer god's bony hand. He said, I will bestow upon you the ancient sorcerer technique, 10 directions return to 1. I will also bestow upon you the divine artifact, 10 directions seal. If you can cultivate it to the great mastery realm, one seal will be able to suppress an entire world. Heaven, and earth will return to 1, and you will be able to suppress it with a wave of your hand. Yi Qinghan received the metal scroll and 10 directions seal respectfully with both hands. He could not tell what level of secret technique this was. It was either a 12th grade or 13th grade secret technique. He could not tell whether this 10 directions seal was a high-tier divine artifact or a legendary supreme-tier high-tier divine artifact. However, he was certain that anything that the elder could give would not be bad. He gently opened the metal scroll. The first thing that entered his spiritual sea was a beam of divine light. It was the ancient sorcerer tribe's language inheritance. He could easily understand the sorcerer tribe's language, which was originally difficult to understand. Heaven and earth are divided into 10 directions. With a wave of my hand, I can swallow the universe. With a single eye of my will, I can conquer the 9 heavens. With the 10 directions seal, I can suppress the gods. Yi Qinghan did not understand the meaning of this sentence, but he understood the aura contained within it. If one cultivated it to the great mastery realm, they could swallow an entire world with a wave of their hand. With a single will, they could surpass the 9 heavens. The 10 directions seal could suppress any god. Could this be a legendary top-tier high-tier divine artifact? Yi Qinghan held the 10 directions seal. He felt an endless amount of gentle divine power involuntarily rush into his body, transforming his godhead. He could not help but be shocked. It could even transform his godhead. As expected of a high-tier divine artifact. I am the second sorcerer god, Imperial Sky. From today onwards, you are my disciple in name. You can become my last disciple after you cultivate to the High God Shrine. Now you can leave. If you do not cultivate to the High God Shrine, you will never enter the tomb. Remember, you must not reveal my location. The elder waved his hand and directly took Yi Qinghan away. In the blink of an eye, Yi Qinghan and the divine bird had already appeared outside God Extinction Mountain, in the valley. The 9 remoteness master's prediction was wrong. This was not the tomb of the third sorcerer god, but the hiding place of the second sorcerer god. Chapter 581. As soon as Yi Qinghan came out of the valley, he realized that Emperor Yi and Lu Zhantian were not there. He frowned and looked around. When he came to the entrance of the valley, he saw a conspicuous stone tablet in the center. Return to eccentric sect immediately. There were only 5 words, but they were written in a flamboyant style. It was very similar to Lu Zhantian's. Yi Qinghan knew that something had happened to eccentric sect. He immediately turned into armor with the god-slaying eagle and flew into the sky. When Yi Qinghan came out of seclusion, Yi Qinghan had just arrived at Mount Gan. In one day and one night, Yi Qinghan rushed to Mount Xixia like a madman. He realized that the entire territory of Mushan residence was in chaos. The immortal guards in the city could not withstand a single blow, and almost all of them had fallen. At this moment, The battle between Emperor Yi and Gongyang Matian had ended. Gongyang Matian said hoarsely, "Attack, kill without mercy." The battle was a draw. Gongyang Matian wanted to intimidate Emperor Yi, but he did not expect to be forced into a draw by a little girl in the realm of lower god priest. The general of a generation did not raise the morale of the army. Instead, he was at a disadvantage. The morale of Lulan Blade and the Dragon Riders increased greatly. At this moment, it seemed that Gongyang Matian was not invincible. At least, he was beaten to his knees by Emperor Yi. Kill. Gongyang Zhanlong led 50,000 immortal guards and rushed to the valley. He wanted to take advantage of the terrain and tear apart the defense of eccentric sect's army. Emperor Yi pursed his lips as he looked at the army that was charging toward him. He endured the intense pain that felt like his soul was being torn apart. His eyes were wide open as he stared ahead. He raised his lily-white hand slightly. Tan Huangtian and the other two raised their drumsticks at the same time. Dong dong dong. Before the three of them could beat the drums on the other side were beaten. The drums shook the sky and strengthened the morale of the immortal guards, and suppressed the morale of eccentric sect's army. The earth trembled as the 50,000 prefecture god armies soared to the sky. Every one of them was equipped with armor and spears. Their divine protection robes fluttered loudly as they charged towards the canyon, only 1,000 meters away from the trap. Zhu Xiong's heart was about to be shattered by the drumbeats, and his face was pale. Helpless, Emperor Yi could only shake the bracelet and release a pleasant sound to relieve the pressure behind him. Kill. Gongyang Zhanlong smiled disdainfully. Wielding his saber, he took the lead and led the army into the trap. Emperor Yi accurately calculated the time and lowered his jade hand as he said in a low voice, "Knock, shatter the earth." Boom. Stan Huangtian, Nie Tian, and Zi Tian, the three experts beat their war drums at the same time. They gathered their battle chi and blasted the surface of the trap. The rock layers several meters deep were blasted apart and collapsed. The prefecture god army did not expect the Gan mountain ridge to be hollow. The ground had completely collapsed. Above them was a poisonous miasma that prevented them from flying up. Below them was a poisonous miasma that would kill them instantly. Most of them were still able to control their bodies in time and hang on the ground, but there were still several thousand people who couldn't defend themselves in time and fell into the trap. They were swallowed by the poisonous gas, and their godheads were corroded by the poisonous gas. They died on the spot. Boom. The rank 12-7 demise snake swung its huge tail and smashed it down from the sky towards the prefecture god army. The huge tail covered a radius of several thousand meters and directly smashed the army into the abyss. The abyss was filled with poisonous gas, and those who touched it would definitely die. There was no time to struggle at all. Gongyang Zhanlong roared and wanted to block the attack of the rank 12-7 demise snake. However, how could his strength be compared to the 7 demise snake? He was immediately smashed into the abyss and was infected by the poisonous gas. However, he did not die on the spot and once again rushed into the sky. Roar! The 7 demise snake rushed out from the poisonous miasma above and spat out a mouthful of poisonous gas. The stench spread for thousands of meters and completely covered the top of the trap. Some of the stronger god worshippers immediately fainted and fell into the trap. It was too fast, so fast that even Gongyang Matian could not react. There were not even 1,000 people left in his trump card army. The prefecture god army's superintendent was dead. The remaining few hundred people wanted to rush back madly. But how could Emperor Yi let them escape? Her jade hand waved again and roared, "Release the arrows, don't leave a single one alive." The 7 demise snake roared and once again rushed into the depths of the miasma and disappeared without a trace. Then, a rain of arrows with the 7 demise poison shot forward. Close to 1,000 prefecture god army soldiers could not escape this wave of arrows. Every one of them was injured and had been poisoned. Even if they could escape now, they would not be able to survive. Ah! The screams were endless. Lulan's blade and dragon cavalry roared into the sky. They were so excited that they could not speak. They were just a mixed army. When would they be able to win such a huge battle? Moreover, the people in front of them were the famous army god, Gongyang Matian's army. Moreover, they were the trump card of the main army. Gong Yangmatian swallowed his saliva and slowly got up. Seeing that the prefecture god army had all fallen into the trap, and not a single one had escaped, his face turned purple. He clenched his fists and his throat seemed to be stuck. He could not speak at all. 30,000 wolf cavalry were dead and 50,000 prefecture god army were completely wiped out. Until now, there was not even a single attack. This was simply unprecedented. Kacha! He stared at Emperor Yi from a distance and took a deep breath. A cruel and callous smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It sent chills down the spines of those who saw it. Emperor Yi, I really admire you more and more. Unfortunately, you have angered me. I will make you regret what you have done today. I will let you see with your own eyes how Guangzong dies in front of you. Gong Yangmatian roared. Today? You don't have a chance. To tell you the truth, I only have 200,000 crossbow arrows. I just used one wave, 10,000 arrows. Now I only have 190,000 arrows left. As long as you are willing to use the lives of 100,000 soldiers to fill this abyss, you may still have a chance. Emperor Yi said coldly. The abyss was dug out by Little Jia to a depth of 1,000 meters. It was enough to fill 100,000 people. The corpses in the abyss were scattered everywhere. They were covered by the miasma and could not see the bottom of the abyss. It was 1,000 meters wide and 1,000 meters deep. The Gan mountain ridge was dug out by Little Jia. It was not easy to pass through. Taking a detour would take an extra month. Even if Gong Yangmatian's army was stronger than ordinary people, it would still take half a month. By the time Gong Yangmatian circled behind Emperor Yi would only need to lead his army to the opposite side, and he would still be able to defend. As long as there were people, Guangzong did not care about the Xixia mountain ridge headquarters. Are you threatening me? How can a small Gan mountain ridge stop my footsteps? Gong Yangmatian shouted sternly. Yes, I am. If you have the ability, send your army to fill it. Emperor Yi replied angrily. Good. I like your temper. I have led the army for thousands of years. I have fought on the battlefield and opened up new territories. I can even kill the Iron Dragon army governor. Why can't I kill your ragtag army? Gong Yangmatian's handsome face became distorted. He waved his hand and shouted at Duan Jingmu. I will give you 1 day to fill up the ravine. If you can't fill it up, you will lead the army and jump down. Duan Jingmu, the Eastern Pacifying Army governor, knelt and accepted the order. He led the 150,000 soldiers of the Eastern Pacifying Army and began to split the mountain. They were ready to flatten the Gan mountain ridge and fill up the ravine. However, Gong Yangmatian did not expect to attack from the front. Instead, he secretly called in a large number of spies and said to them, Find out where else this Gan mountain ridge can lead to the opposite side. On the other side, Guangzong and the others could not help but frown when they saw the enemy's army moving quickly. Emperor Yi was exhausted and his soul was weak. Just as he was about to fall asleep, his shoulder was suddenly pressed down by a large hand. He turned his head and a beautiful smile appeared on his face. Chapter 582. Emperor Yi turned to look at Yi Qinghan, and immediately relaxed. With him there, she didn't need to worry at all. This was the so-called sense of security. Yi Qinghan had rushed to Xixia Mountain first, only to find out that Guangzong had led everyone to Gan Mountain Ridge. Then he rushed from Xixia Mountain to Gan Mountain Ridge. Fortunately, he wasn't one step behind, or else it would have been too late for regrets. Leave the rest to me. Yi Qinghan patted Emperor Ye's shoulder. His aura was convincing. Most of the people in Lolan's Blade and Dragon Cavalry still recognized Yi Qinghan. He had defeated so many experts of the Mu clan in one night, and his disciple, Emperor Yi, had almost killed Lu Zhantian in one move. It was difficult not to know Yi Qinghan. However, Gong Yangmatian didn't know Yi Qinghan, nor did he want to know him, so he didn't even ask anyone to investigate Yi Qinghan. His face was cold and murderous. At this moment, a spy came to report. Reporting young Marshal. A black-clothed spy rushed over from afar, holding an adventurer, who was at the venerable emperor rank. Reporting young Marshal. This person is an adventurer from a nearby hunter family. He is very familiar with Gan Mountain Ridge. He said there is a shortcut to the other side. The spy said excitedly, "Good. From today onwards, you will be the deputy supervisor of Eagle Eye Division. You will be rewarded with 3,000 low-grade divine crystals and 1 divine spark. Go and receive your reward." Gongyang Matian said in a low voice. The adventurer was so scared that he was trembling. He knelt outside the tent, waiting for Gongyang Matian to summon him. Gongyang Matian stepped out of the main tent, his battle robes fluttering. He looked down at the adventurer in front of him and said in a low voice, "If you can bring me to the other side of Gon Mountain Ridge through the shortcut, I will reward you with 1 divine spark and 1,000 divine crystals." "Young Marshal, this commoner does know of a shortcut to the other side, but the path is narrow and not suitable for a large army." The adventurer didn't dare to speak carelessly, so he spoke the truth. "How narrow? How many people can walk side by side?" Gongyang Matian asked in a deep voice. "Young Marshal, it's a long and narrow cliff path that can allow 5 people to walk side by side. However, there's a poisonous miasma above and an abyss below. You can't fly up or dive down. It's very dangerous. Once someone tries to stop you, the army will easily disperse. I hope young Marshal will reconsider." The adventurer reminded respectfully, "Do many people know about this passage?" Gongyang Matian snorted coldly. The adventurer knew that he had said too much, so he hurriedly replied, "This passageway is hidden deep in the mountains. I don't know when it was opened up, and we need to fly to and fro. Therefore, this commoner dares to guarantee that other than this lowly one, no one else knows about it. That's because there are many divine herbs at the bottom of the passageway. This lowly one accidentally found out about the passageway, and due to my own selfish desires, I didn't tell anyone. Ingdong, choose 30,000 elites and follow him to the other side through the shortcut. We'll launch a pincer attack tomorrow morning. Use the piercing cloud arrow as the signal." Then he looked at the adventurer and reminded him, "Be careful. Let the scouts explore the way first. Don't trust anyone." Ingdong personally selected 30,000 elites and took away all the experts of Gongyang Matian Guard. They moved quietly and didn't alert anyone. However, they neglected the 7 demise snake in the miasma above them. The 7 demise snake looked down from the sky and saw their actions. It ordered a large number of the 7 demise snake's descendants to sneak into the Gon Mountain Ridge and control the Gon Mountain Ridge with a radius of 10,000 miles. The Gon Mountain Ridge stretched endlessly. No one knew how long it was. Even if they took a detour to the other side, it would still take half a month to travel. It could be seen how long the Gon Mountain Ridge was. Ingdong took the adventurer and took a detour of 1,000 miles. After an hour they stopped. The adventurer respectfully pointed forward. On the other side of a cliff, there was a large number of green vines entwined around it, blocking their view. "My lord, behind the green vines is the passageway. It's the same on the other side. Therefore, very few people know about this place. My lord, you can send people to explore." The adventurer was extremely respectful. He didn't dare to show any disrespect. Ingdong cut the green vines in half. The passageway came into view. He ordered people to build a bridge and sent people to go deeper. After confirming that no one knew about this passageway, he led the army to the other side. The 7 demise snake constantly slithered around the cliff. Then, it dived into the depths and disappeared without a trace. Soon, the news reached the 12th rank 7 demise snake. The 7 demise snake had evolved into a snake's body with a human face. It was extremely ugly, and its bell-like eyes were extremely frightening. "Yi Qinghan, we meet again. This old man will give you a favor," the 7 demise snake said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan looked at the large man in front of him. He bowed slightly and said, "So it's Senior. Many thanks to Senior for helping us. I wonder if Senior has any favor to give me?" I have a deal with Emperor Yi. There's no need to thank me." The 7 demise snake coldly snorted. It seemed that he still held a grudge against Yi Qinghan. He coldly said, "Some of the enemy's army have already taken a detour to the other side. It's not too late for you to bring people to stop them." Yi Qinghan was shocked. He quickly asked, "Where?" 1,000 miles to the south. There's a passage that runs from east to west. It's about 5 meters wide. You can't fly up or dive down. It's covered in poisonous gas. If you block the path, you can hold off 10,000 men. However, you should still be careful. It's best if you bring some people with you. The 7 demise snake calmly reminded. Yi Qinghan took his saber and left. The rest of the matters were left to Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue. Swish swish swish. Yi Qinghan galloped 1,000 miles. Under the guidance of the 7 demise snake, he arrived at the entrance before Yingdong's Mo Tianwei. He stood 300 meters away from the entrance, which happened to be a turn. He held his saber and waited for the army to arrive. Yingdong never thought that there would be someone waiting for them at the end of the road. Moreover, they were occupying a favorable terrain. Night fell. The 30,000 army quietly approached Yi Qinghan. However, they didn't know that danger was approaching. The star-twining vine clung to the cliff. Its vines were everywhere, extending for thousands of meters. It could attack at any time. Yingdong's army had a team of 10 scouting ahead. At this moment, they were approaching the turn. Yi Qinghan had already sensed their presence. The saber in his hand trembled as he gripped it tightly. Shwa! The 10 people had just turned the corner when a saber light flashed past their heads. Blood soared into the sky. Their godheads were shattered by the saber light. Their bodies were directly swept away by the star-twining vine. The 10 people didn't even have time to scream. They died silently. Yi Qinghan sheathed his saber and waited for the army. However, Yingdong discovered that at the turn ahead, none of the 10 scouts had returned. He couldn't help but frown. What's going on? Great Vanguard, bring some people over to take a look. Yingdong was indeed cautious. He waved his hand and said. The Great Vanguard was an extreme lower divine priest. He had been fighting all his life and was extremely powerful. He held a long spear and led 4 people to the turn. You 2 go and take a look, the Great Vanguard said to the 2 people beside him. The 2 divine priests held their spears and carefully walked forward. They pointed ahead but didn't look at the star-twining vine on the cliff. The star-twining vine suddenly smashed out with its vines. It smashed the Great Vanguard and the 4 soldiers down the cliff. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh. The star-twining vine immediately retreated after killing everyone. Yi Qinghan held his saber and walked to the front. He looked ahead and glared at the army. Yingdong was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a long time. He had been fighting for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who dared to stop an army of 10,000 people alone. Chapter 583. The night was as dark as ink, pouring down in torrents. Poison filled the air, making it impossible to go up or down. Even the priests had to walk on their feet. The rugged path was only about 5 meters wide. If they fell off the cliff, even the priests would be poisoned to death. With Yi Qinghan blocking the way, the army couldn't even charge forward. The slightest carelessness would cause them to fall off the cliff. Moreover, Yi Qinghan had the star-twining vine on his shoulder. The vines danced and were much stronger than the priests. Hundreds of thousands of vines were equivalent to tens of thousands of priests. Who are you? I'm Yingdong, the superintendent of the Mo Tianwei guards of Gongyang Prefecture. If you're willing to let us pass, I'll repay you generously in the future. Yingdong thought that he had met a rogue cultivator who was cultivating here. He didn't want to make more enemies, so he cupped his fists and said, My name is Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan smiled, raised his saber, and said lightly, Yi Qinghan. Yingdong didn't recognize him. He frowned and asked, Daoist Yi, can you let us pass and let us pass? I'm the sect master of the Kuang sect. If you want to, then leave your life behind. Yi Qinghan's saber trembled, and his aura exploded. He took the lead to attack the 30,000 Mo Tianwei guards alone. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Yingdong was furious. He took the lead and shouted, Follow me and kill. Kill him, and you'll be a captain. Boom. Yi Qinghan's 5 elemental Dao body exploded. His saber contained the power of 3 godhoods, and it split open Yingdong's divine weapon. The general of a generation couldn't withstand his saber attack. Cracked at the long saber in Yingdong's hand was broken, and the saber slashed into Yingdong's body. Yi Qinghan abruptly spun around, causing a deafening tremor that tore Dong's body apart. Swoosh! Swoosh! The star-twining vine danced. More than 100,000 vines wrapped around Dong's broken body, and the remaining vines smashed into the army. No. The army screamed miserably. Dong struggled madly, trying to break free from the star-twisting vine. Swish! Swish! Yi Qinghan slashed out dozens of times consecutively. Wherever he went, people would either fall off the cliff or die tragically under his blade. It was only a 5-meter-long road, and it was all within the attack range of the 7-foot heavy berserk. Yi Qinghan could no longer be bothered with the godheads. He crushed them all so that the star-twisting vine could eat as much as it wanted. When the cloud beast smelled blood, it reached out with its sharp claws and tore apart Dong's godhead. It swallowed it whole, and then obediently returned to Yi Qinghan's body. Mo Tianwei's superintendent was dead, and Mo Tianwei was in chaos. The adventurer who led the way was trampled to death by the chaos. The army mutinied and turned tail to flee. But how could their speed compare to Yi Qinghan's? Their backs were facing Yi Qinghan, and they only wanted to run for their lives. This was equivalent to letting Yi Qinghan slaughter them. At this moment, Yi Qinghan began to collect the godheads. He killed their bodies with one slash and suppressed their souls. The star-twisting vine was in charge of collecting the godheads. It was extremely fast, like a wolf or a tiger in a flock of sheep. The powerful Mo Tianwei couldn't attack, and could only passively be slaughtered. Hold on. He's alone. Boom. Yi Qinghan killed more than 10 god priests with one slash. His aura shattered mountains and rivers, and he transformed into a god of war. They were already scared out of their wits. Yi Qinghan was the strongest vanguard, and he was unstoppable. Kill. Yi Qinghan roared and broke the army's morale. He killed until he went berserk, and his godly power was depleted rapidly. He swallowed mid-grade god crystals one after another, and most of them couldn't be absorbed. This caused a large amount of god crystals to remain in his body. If he couldn't release them in the future, it would affect his body greatly. However, Yi Qinghan didn't care. He circulated his 5-elemental Dao body to the peak. At this moment, his offense was his strongest defense. At least 1/3 of the 30,000 Mo Tianwei guards were squeezed off the cliff. Thousands of them were beaten down by Yi Qinghan, and nearly 10,000 were killed. There were less than 10,000 left. The Mo Tianwei guards were already scared out of their wits. At this moment, they only wanted to leave this damned cliff. They couldn't fly up or dive down, and they couldn't even unleash their explosive power. They were crowded, and many of them died at the hands of their own teammates. Everyone wanted to escape, and this led to more and more people falling off the cliff and dying. The tens of thousands of 7 demise snakes below benefited greatly. They crazily devoured the godly bodies and didn't even let go of the godheads. Only the universe rings were collected. In one night, Yi Qinghan killed his way to the opposite shore. Out of the 30,000 Mo Tianwei guards, only a dozen of them were left shivering at the end of the road. If they turned and flew over now, they might be able to escape. However, Yi Qinghan's slash was enough to kill all of them. Should they fight head-on? The dozen of them looked at each other. Yi Qinghan was like a demon. He had killed 30,000 people in one night, and his godly power wasn't depleted. In fact, Yi Qinghan was also at the end of his rope. His entire body was aching, and he didn't even have the strength to lift his saber. A large number of divine crystals were squeezed in his body, and the aftereffects were starting to take effect. It suppressed his movements. The meridians in his body were cut into pieces by the ruthless divine crystals, and golden blood flowed out from the surface of his body. Kill. Yi Qinghan roared and forced out the god-slaying eagle and the cloud beasts in his body. The star-twining vine stretched out 340,000 vines and danced in the sky. They carried some poisonous gas and entangled the dozen Mo Tianwei guards. It didn't care about the cost. The vines were constantly cut off, but it refused to let go. The cloud beasts turned into lightning and pierced through their skulls, grabbing their godheads. The god-slaying eagle finished the job and swallowed a broken body. That night, the star-twining vine, this glutton, was so full that it vomited. It didn't want to eat anymore, and threw the remaining people off the cliff. Humph! Yi Qinghan's face was pale. The remaining divine crystals in his body started to pour out endless divine powers, violently tearing his limbs and bones apart. He started to break through the bottleneck, and wanted to break through to the lower extreme divine priest realm. This is not the place to break through. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth, and wanted to go back. However, the divine powers in his body could destroy his 5 elements Dao body at any time. He had to suppress it. However, there was no time for him to suppress the divine powers in his body. God-slaying eagle, bring me back. Yi Qinghan jumped lightly onto the God-slaying eagle's back. The God-slaying eagle didn't dare to fly high, and could only fly slowly along the ground. On the heavenly jewel path, corpses were strewn everywhere. It was as tragic as hell. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and didn't look. Instead, he focused on suppressing the divine powers in his body. He started to guide the remaining divine crystals to heal the wounds in his body and replenish the divine powers in his godhead. The sky gradually brightened. A gust of morning wind blew, and the smell of blood spread for thousands of miles. It was nauseating. Under the leadership of Duan Jingmu, the East Pacifying Army kept moving the mountains to fill up the ravines. They actually managed to fill up more than half of the ravines. However, under the harassment of Lu Lan's blade and the dragon cavalry, they suffered heavy losses. Every wave of arrows would take away hundreds or even thousands of their men. More than half of the 190,000 arrows were used up. Almost 20,000 men from the East Pacifying Army were killed. However, the East Pacifying Army was unafraid of death. They forcibly filled up the ravines, and were less than 100 meters away from the cliff. This distance was nothing. The arrows could penetrate through and kill the eccentric Sex army. Gongyang Matian looked at the opposite shore in anticipation, waiting for Ying Dong's signal to attack. Chapter 584. The sun was like fire, and the poisonous fog in the sky was weakening. Yi Qinghan was brought back by the god-slaying eagle. Medusa saw that he was covered in blood but was still grinning. Her heart instantly ached for him. She frowned and scolded. Will you die if you don't put on a brave front? It's okay. I've knocked the 30,000 soldiers off the cliff. Just guard this place. Yi Qinghan suppressed the violent divine power in his body, and looked at the enemy army that was already in formation. 30,000 archers lined up at the front, and there was a large number of divine shields protecting the front. A large number of crossbows were ready and waiting for orders. One wave of crossbow bolts could kill close to 10,000 people. The armaments of the East Pacifying Army were much stronger than the Kuang Sex army. They had an inexhaustible supply of crossbows. Unlike the blades of Lulan, they only had 100,000 crossbows left. Everyone follow the rocks and find cover, Lu Outyin said in a deep voice. The blades of Lulan hid behind the rocks. If they didn't hide now, they would all become hedgehogs after a wave of crossbows. Di Longtian waved his hand, and the soldiers at the back took their mounts and hid in the tunnel dug by Little Jia. Everyone was afraid that their mounts would be hurt, and would rather use their bodies to block the crossbows. As time passed, Gongyang Matian's face became uglier and uglier. He took the initiative to contacting Dong, but there was no response. He couldn't help but say angrily, Men, find out the whereabouts of the heavenly guards. Soon Hawkeye responded. The 30,000 heavenly guards were all killed. The tunnel was filled with corpses, and the cliff was covered in blood like a waterfall. Boom. Gongyang Matian's mouth twitched. As the young commander of the Gongyang Prefecture, he had led the army for almost 10,000 years. This was the first time he encountered such a situation. The enemy's army was unharmed, and his side had lost 100,000 soldiers, and all of them were the main force. Gongyang Matian smashed the table with a punch. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, Force your way down the cliff. If you don't take captives, kill them. Dong dong dong. The sound of drums filled the air, and the rocks collapsed. 30 heaven-shaking drums were beaten at the same time, shaking the blood of the gods. The sound waves were terrifying and rushed to the other side. Dong dong dong. Tan Huangtian and Nye Tian's veins were bulging. They danced the heaven-shaking drums, and the sound of the drums was like thunder. Ding. After resting for a day, Emperor Yi finally recovered. At this moment, he played the divine zither, and the sound of the zither accompanied the sound of the drum as it rushed towards the opposite shore. The drumbeats from both sides rose and fell. After colliding, they rushed towards the sky, sending the poison barrier flying. The sky was blue as if it had been washed. Emperor Yi plucked the strings of his guqin. The high notes were ear-piercing. Unexpectedly, they were accompanied by the sound of 3 heaven-shaking drums. They were evenly matched with the other party's 30 heaven-shaking drums. Fire! Whoosh 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 whoosh. Tens of thousands of swords were fired at the same time. Tens of thousands of arrows rained down from the sky towards the Guangzong's position. Find cover! Gu Qingyu, Stan Wuxia and Qitian Monkey King were protecting Zi Tian, Stan Huangtian, and Ye Tian respectively. Yi Qinghan was protecting Emperor Yi. The rain of arrows was shattered by the impact of the arrows. Their faces were pale. Swish, swish, boom. The Eastern Pacifying Army made use of the rain of arrows to press forward. They were only a few hundred meters away, but every wave of arrows pushed them forward by tens of meters. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan slashed his saber into the sky, breaking dozens of arrows. These arrows were powerful enough to penetrate the rocks at a distance of 100 steps. They were not something the priests could resist. Yi Qinghan took the opportunity to consume the remaining divine crystals in his body to refine his body. Boom, boom, boom. The drumbeats were still colliding. The central area was constantly shattered by the drumbeats. The 30 heaven-shaking drums drove the army forward. Emperor Yi and the others were forced to retreat. They kept pressing towards the center of the cliff. Emperor Yi's hair danced in the wind. His face was ferocious. Once the drumbeats completely suppressed them, it would attack the army's soul. The army's soul would even be shattered by the drumbeats. The Guangzong sect was defeated. Yi Qinghan saw how tired Emperor Yi was. His soul could not hold on any longer. He said to Medusa, "You defend. Emperor Yi and I will work together." Medusa took over Yi Qinghan's defense. Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi's souls became one. Divine power rushed into Emperor Yi's arm. The vast divine power assisted Emperor Yi in activating the Renhuang Guqin's attack. Hum! A long howl pierced through the universe and cut through the river. It broke through the sound of the heaven-shaking drums and rushed into the enemy's camp. The soldiers and archers at the front spurted blood at the same time. The archers, especially, were pale and could no longer fire their divine crossbows. Archers, get ready! Fire! The 10,000 archers of the Guangzong sect drew their bows and released arrows. These arrows were soaked in poisonous gas and would die if they touched them. At this moment they fell forward. Some arrows directly penetrated the divine power enchantment, pierced through the soldiers' defenses, and pierced through their bodies and divine shields. Ah! In the blink of an eye, the archers and soldiers suffered heavy losses. The soldiers fell, and without the protection of the divine shields, a large number of archers fell to the ground. Whoosh! Whoosh! The archers of the Guangzong sect seized the opportunity and shot more than 50,000 arrows in an instant, killing more than 10,000 soldiers and 20,000 archers. The remaining archers retreated and fled to the rear. The Guangzong sect saw that the enemy was retreating and immediately stopped shooting. There were too few arrows left. There were less than 50,000 arrows left. It was only enough to stop the enemy's attack once. More than 30,000 people were killed by the Guangzong sect. Gongyang Matian was furious. He shouted to the only general beside him, Duan Jingmu. "This time, you will personally lead the army to attack. They don't have many arrows left. This time, you must take down the cliff at all costs." "Yes, sir." Duan Jingmu was, after all, a veteran. He had experienced more difficult situations than this. At this moment, his expression did not change. He led the remaining 130,000 soldiers of the Guangzong sect to put up their divine shields and pressed on towards the cliff. Gongyang Matian boarded the chariot again, grabbed the drumsticks, and beat the heaven-shaking drums. The army's momentum soared. Dong, dong, dong. The sound of the drums soared into the sky and blasted towards Emperor Yi's guqin. In an instant, Emperor Yi's guqin was suppressed. It was so weak that it was almost negligible. Emperor Yi and Yi Qinghan's souls were as one. Although they were suppressed, they were not injured and could still resist. Kill. Archers, get ready. Shoot. The archers of the Guangzhong sect once again shot out tens of thousands of arrows. A large number of archers did not have time to dodge, and suffered heavy casualties. Almost 10,000 soldiers of the Blade of Lulan were shot dead. Hide. Lu Outyin was heartbroken. These were the main force of the Blade of Lulan. Duan Jingmu personally led the army to attack. The army's momentum was like a rainbow. They pressed until they were 50 meters away from the cliff. As long as they entered the cliff, the heaven-shaking drums would lose their effect. Suppress them. Don't let them rush into the cliff. Xia Qiyue roared. If the enemy rushed into the cliff, the Guangzhong sect's army would collapse. The gap between the two sides was not small. Yi Qinghan looked down at the army. The army was still advancing rapidly. The archers suppressed the Guangzhong sect's army. In the blink of an eye, they were 30 meters away from the cliff. 20 meters. 10 meters. There was no chance. They could not stop them. Boom. Gongyang Motian used all his strength to pierce through the heaven-shaking drums. The sound of the drums blasted towards Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi. They did not have a chance to attack the army. Duan Jingmu took the opportunity to lead the army into the cliff. Chapter 585. Almost 10,000 people rushed into the cliff in an instant. The East Pacifying Army was crowded and could not move freely. Little Golden Crow took the opportunity to fly over and spit out a fire that covered 1,000 feet. Origin of fire, listen to my command. Burn the sky. Yi Qinghan formed a seal with his palms and commanded the 5 elements. The fire fell from the sky and gathered at the bottom of the cliff. However, it was blocked by the defensive enchantment of more than 10,000 soldiers. The godly fire burned the divine power, and both sides consumed it quickly. The scorching heat penetrated the enchantment, and many soldiers were roasted alive. The top 11th grade godly fire was not something that ordinary god priests could resist. The eccentric sect's army once again formed archers and shot out the remaining 40,000 arrows. The divine enchantment was almost shattered. Duan Jingmu felt the threat of death and roared. Use all your strength to block this wave of attack. The rest is our show. Whoosh. Divine light soared into the sky. Tens of thousands of god priests worked together to resist the godly fire. Step by step, they closed in on the eccentric sect's army. The distance between the two sides was less than 200 meters. A large number of venerable sovereigns fell. The supreme masters of a small plain were like grass in the middle plain. They were easy pickings. The eccentric sect's army was very nervous. The two sides could not clash. The eccentric sect's army was just a third-rate army. How could they withstand the attack of the main army? However, in the face of such a battle, it seemed that they had to fight to the death. Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue both put on their armor and rushed to the front. Seeing Yi Qinghan and Little Golden Crow working together to stop the East Pacifying Army, they clenched their swords and roared. All god priests, come to the front. If we have to die, we will die first. No one is allowed to retreat. We swear to live and die with the eccentric sect. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 40 people from the eccentric sect all came to the front. They were the strongest vanguard in the world. When they attacked, they were invincible and unstoppable. Di Longtian stood on a golden dragon and held the 5 elements golden wheel in his hand. He looked forward angrily. Si Wuxia Lin Wutian and the other juniors of the eccentric sect all came to the front. They were ready to fight back. When they were 100 meters apart, it was time to attack. If they were any closer, the eccentric sect's morale would not be able to be raised. Brothers, are you ready? Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and decided to begin the final battle. These people could not stop them. Get ready. The army roared, spears rushing into the sky. At this moment, Gongyang Motian led the last 70,000 Motian guards and rushed towards the cliff. He shouted across the air. You killed 30,000 of my Motian guards, 30,000 of the wolf cavalry, and 50,000 of the prefecture god army. You and I are irreconcilable enemies. In today's battle, I will not only destroy the Kuang sect, But I will also destroy the small plane behind you. I will let you know the consequences of offending me, Gongyang Matian. When Yi Qinghan heard this, he was instantly enraged. After today's battle, there was no way out. If they retreated further, they would end up in the endless plains. Follow me. Yi Qinghan gave up on stopping the army from advancing and charged madly at the enemy with his sword in hand. Boom! When the saber landed on the barrier, Duan Qinghan immediately felt dizzy, and he was forced to retreat several steps. However, the barrier of the enemy army had almost been shattered by this saber strike. Duan Jingmu, who was standing at the front, turned pale. He looked at Yi Qinghan as if he was looking at a madman. He is a madman. Duan Jingmu trembled. He had never seen a commander who would attack the defensive barrier of an army of 100,000 all by himself. Kill. Duan Jingmu led the army and continued to charge, causing Yi Qinghan to retreat from the canyon. As soon as they were out of the canyon, the East Pacifying Army removed the barrier and rushed towards the army of the Kuang sect. Follow me. Lu Outyan and the others led the army and rushed towards the East Pacifying Army. The Kuang sect had more than 30,000 gods at the front line, but their numbers were still not comparable to the East Pacifying Army. The difference was not just a little, but 10 times. Roar! Di Longtian stood on the golden dragon and held the 5 elements golden wheel in his hand. He was invincible as he charged into the enemy camp and killed anyone he saw. Not even the gods could withstand a single blow from him. Even the Kiliarchs were easily killed by him. There were at least 20 people like Di Longtian in the Kuang sect. They fought like dragons and charged into the enemy army, tearing apart the enemy's charge. However, they were surrounded by dozens of gods at the same level. The Kiliarchs and tribunals were almost all pinned down by the Kuang sect's inner sect. Yi Qinghan was even more ferocious. He charged into the center of the enemy army with his long sword and activated the 5 elements. Flames burned the sky, and the origin of metal was activated. With a sweep of his sword, no one could stand within 100 meters. The little golden crow was not afraid of things getting out of hand. She continued to support Yi Qinghan's 11th grade godly fire and blocked the canyon. The army that charged through the canyon had no backup. They were blocked by Lu Lan's blade and the dragon riders. Ren Huangyi began to kill the enemy's powerful priests one by one. The Kiliarchs and tribunes became the targets of her attention. The sound of the guqin transformed into sharp blades and attacked the priest's consciousness. They suddenly exploded and died tragically on the spot. There were about 70 to 80,000 East Pacifying Army soldiers who charged through the canyon. Half of them were gods. The Kuang sect could barely breathe under the pressure. Soldiers fell one after another. Gods, ordinary soldiers, cries of agony and blood flowed everywhere. The 8 tribunals of the dragon riders played a crucial role. Otherwise, the Kuang sect would have been defeated immediately. Wherever the 8 11th grade 7 demise snakes passed, poisonous gas would wreak havoc. Even the Kuang sect's own men fell to the ground. However, the 8 tribunals directly rode the 7 demise snakes into the depths of the enemy army. The 7 demise snakes turned into Jiao dragons and swept their tails, killing countless. Just as the Kuang sect was struggling, the star-twining vine rushed out of Yi Qinghan's body and formed a pincer attack with the Kuang sect. One of its vines was equivalent to a main force soldier. With 2 of its vines working together, it could instantly kill an ordinary soldier. It had hundreds of thousands of vines, and wherever it passed, there would be countless casualties. The battlefield was the best place to raise the star-twining vine. It ate one corpse and threw it away. The soldiers that charged through the canyon felt like they had entered hell. They were surrounded by dozens or even hundreds of vines. Some gods were even entangled by more than 10,000 vines. Even their divine bodies were strangled to death. Their divinity was entangled, and they could not resist at all. Tens of thousands of vines protected the main body. The star-twining vine climbed halfway up the mountain without restraint. It desperately entangled a god and threw him into the sky. Whoosh whoosh whooshed, the vines danced wildly. With the support of the star-twining vine, the Kuang sect's army actually blocked the attack of the Eastern Pacifying Army. Duan Jingmu was blocked by Medusa. Medusa took advantage of the chaos and used her eyes to suppress him. In such a chaotic situation, No one noticed that Medusa had petrified Duanjingmu. She directly shattered his body and turned it into fine powder that was blown away by the wind. The Eastern Pacifying Army's superintendent was dead. The army that charged through the canyon was instantly defeated. They wanted to rush back, but the canyon was blocked by Yi Qinghan. They also had to face the start-whining vine. They could not help but feel despair. Those who surrender will be spared. Lu Outyan roared and charged into the enemy army again. At this moment, Gongyang Matian was flustered and exasperated. He personally attacked Yi Qinghan. His sword broke through the rocks and stabbed towards Yi Qinghan's body. Chapter 586. As a medium god priest and an extreme medium god priest, he was only half a step away from the great perfection realm. He personally attacked Yi Qinghan. Before the sword arrived, the sword chi pierced through the shackles and tore apart Yi Qinghan's defense, sending him flying. Boom! Yi Qinghan crashed into the enemy behind him and sent dozens of people flying before he could stabilize himself. Cough cough. Yi Qinghan coughed up blood. His divine armor was pierced by the sword chi, and his 5 elements Dao body was also pierced. If he had not dodged quickly, the sword would have pierced his heart. Guangzong, you and I are irreconcilable. Gongyang Matian had suffered heavy losses. At this moment he was burning with anger and personally led the Matian guards to attack. Roar! The 12th grade 7 demise snake stretched out its huge head from the poisonous miasma in the sky. With a roar, it spat out all the poisonous miasma that it had swallowed, instantly covering a radius of 100 miles. Not good, hold your breath. Ah! Holding your breath is useless, retreat. Boom boom boom. In an instant, thousands of Matian guards fell. These were the elites of the army. How could they withstand such a massacre? 7 demise snake. I will destroy your entire clan. Gongyang Matian was furious. He poured out his divine power and stood at the forefront. He ordered the army, everyone retreat. Retreat from Gon Mountain Ridge. This was not Gongyang Matian's battlefield. The 7 demise snake was too poisonous. The 7 demise grass was extremely rare, and it was difficult to defend against the 7 demise snake's poison. Moreover, with such a large army, even if they had the antidote, it was impossible to have so many. Because of the 7 demise snake's participation, the situation of the battle at Gon Mountain Ridge was reversed. Brat, how dare you? Even if your father came personally, he would not dare to say that he would destroy my entire clan. The 12th grade 7 demise snake shouted angrily. Cluck cluck cluck. Gongyang Matian led more than 100,000 soldiers and frantically retreated. He did not dare to face the poisonous miasma head-on, and kept retreating until Gon Mountain Ridge. Gongyang Matian stopped and looked at the small Gon Mountain Ridge. He could not help but be angry. Ah! He had personally led an army of 300,000 soldiers, 50,000 of them were his trump card, 100,000 of them were his personal guards, 100,000 of them were his personal guards, 100,000 of them were his personal guards, and 150,000 of them were part of the Eastern Pacifying Army. Apart from the mansions of the various prefectures, no other forces could stop him. But today he had actually suffered a huge setback in front of the Guangzong. More than half of them were dead or injured. Not even a third of the prefecture god army was left. The prefecture god army was completely annihilated, and more than half of the generals of the Motian Guard who were above the rank of Chiliarch were either killed or injured. Commander Ingdong's death was unclear, and Gongyang Matian did not understand why he had lost so miserably. The Eastern Pacifying Army and the remaining Motianwei bowed their heads, not daring to say anything. The 3 superintendents had all died in battle. This time, they had already lost. Mount Ganshan was not suitable for charging, especially for a main force like the Eastern Pacifying Army. In addition, the opponent had the level 12 7 snakes. This defeat was reasonable, but the losses were too great. Take a detour. I want to raze the insane sect to the ground. Raze their small plane to the ground. Gongyang Matian roared. 100,000 main forces were enough to annihilate the Guangzong army. The conceited Gongyang Matian did not even think of asking for help. He mobilized the army and set off. The news of the Guangzong's complete victory spread to the main battlefield. The Mu clan's army was overjoyed. They did not expect the Guangzong to defeat Gongyang Matian and kill nearly 200,000 of the opponent's soldiers. The Prefecture God Army, their trump card, had been completely annihilated, and the Mo Tianwei had also suffered heavy losses. Good. Ha ha ha, as expected of that person. I didn't expect them to use Mount Ganshan to cause so much damage to Gongyang Matian. The prefecture master laughed excitedly. The tiredness from a month of hard fighting had been swept away. Inform Lu Zhantian and the front lines. Tell them to resist for another half a month. Victory will belong to us. The prefecture master said excitedly to the chief steward. Yes, my lord. The chief steward was also very happy. The Guangzong led by Yi Qinghan had already opened up a second battlefield and successfully destroyed more than half of the Gongyang prefecture's army. The rest were held back. Presumably by this time, that old bastard Gongyang already knows that Gongyang Matian has suffered a great defeat and suffered heavy losses. He will definitely send reinforcements. Tell Lu Zhantian to let them all go. Tell them to go to the second battlefield. The prefecture master smiled coldly and said hoarsely, My lord, please reconsider. Gongyang Matian has suffered a great loss and will definitely not attack by force. He will choose to take a detour to the other side. How can a ragtag army like the Guangzong withstand Gongyang Matian's attack? If you let them go now, won't you be forcing Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi to their deaths? The chief steward asked respectfully. They are not idiots. Can't they wait for Gongyang Matian to take a detour and directly pass through the canyon to the other side? Who told them to resist? The prefecture master said coldly. Sire, my lord, the spies have reported that Gongyang Matian threatened Yi Qinghan. If he doesn't accept the challenge, he will wait for Mo Tianwei to attack the endless plains. I'm afraid that Yi Qinghan will not only fight Gongyang Matian, but also take the initiative to attack Mo Tianwei and the East Pacifying Army. The chief steward replied helplessly. He dares. The war between the Middle Plains is not allowed to involve the small plains. This is the rule set by the divine nation. I don't believe that he dares to risk universal condemnation. The prefecture master said coldly. But Yi Qinghan doesn't dare to gamble. If he loses, the entire plain, his clansmen, and the people of the Guangzong will die. So he has no choice but to fight. The chief steward bowed and analyzed. He then said, This old servant is not worried that Gongyang Matian can win against Yi Qinghan. After all, with the addition of the 12th rank 7 demise snake, the Guangzong will not lose. However, if the army of Gongyang Mansion rushes to the rescue, the Guangzong will not be able to withstand it. In the main battlefield, Lu Zhantian commanded the million-strong army. At this moment, he was extremely exhausted. The army was also very tired and was about to collapse. The experts of the two prefectures had all appeared. Other than the prefecture master who did not participate, all the other experts had appeared. If not for the help of the students of Tianke Divine College that Mu Feilong brought, the Mu clan would have lost long ago. Mu Feilong brought 12 friends. They were all second-year students of Tianke Divine College. Their cultivation was not inferior to Lu Zhantian's. They were all vanguard generals. Some were even military experts. They knew how to arrange troops and formations. They knew all the formations in the world and forcibly blocked the attack of the two prefectures. If not for the fact that the army was exhausted, they would have stopped the counterattack. Mu Feilong looked slightly older than Lu Zhantian. His eyes were full of shrewdness. He was different from Lu Zhantian. He was more cunning and sly, but less heroic. At first glance, one could tell that he was an expert in calculation. Zhantian, I just received a message from Father God. The so-called Guangzong has opened up a second battlefield and almost completely wiped out Gongyang Matian's army. He wants us to let the army of Gongyang Mansion go and support Gongyang Matian. Mu Feilong sneered and said excitedly, As long as we are not restrained by Gongyang Mansion, we can at least free up 300,000 soldiers. Let them rest for 3 days. At that time, we will have the opportunity to counterattack army-shattering army prefecture. Let them go? We have already let 300,000 soldiers go. If we let them go again, Will Guangzhong be able to withstand it? Lu Zhantian asked in dissatisfaction. Brother, how can you be so stupid? In war we rely on brains, not loyalty. Our army is now in a state of extreme exhaustion. Letting Gongyang Mansion's army go is the best choice. If we don't, we won't be able to hold on for 3 days. You are not suitable to be a commander. You are only suitable to be a vanguard. Mu Failong felt disappointed and shook his head. Brother, loyalty is a good thing. But you have to understand the situation. Once our army is defeated, the ones who will die will not only be Guangzhong's men, but all the soldiers of my Mu residence. You are their commander. You have to be responsible for them. Lu Zhantian was silent. He was unwilling to let them go. He would rather Guangzhong kill Gongyang Matian and come to his aid than put Guangzhong in danger. Mu Failong knew Lu Zhantian's prestige in the Iron Dragon army. At this moment, it was not good to offend him. He suppressed his anger and advised in a low voice. Now, Gongyang Matian's army has more than 110,000 soldiers. The Prefecture God army has been annihilated. The Wolf Cavalry has been annihilated. The Matian Guard's main force has been wiped out. And the Eastern Pacifying Army has also lost a small half. Moreover, all 3 of his supervisors have died in battle. Gongyang Matian is no longer a threat to Guangzhong. Lu Zhantian was shocked. He could not believe his ears. Could Guangzhong really do this? Facing an army like Gongyang Matian, even if he personally led an army of 500,000, he would not be able to achieve such a result. At this moment, a few young men walked in from outside the tent. They were wearing the uniform of the Iron Dragon army, but judging from their temperament, they were definitely not from the Iron Dragon army. Only the high and mighty students of the College of Divinity had such a look of disdain. Brother Failong, we are powerless. If we don't have external help, I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for more than 3 days. Therefore, we want to return to school tonight. A young man said in a low voice. Brother Chao Kuan, if Gongyang Matian's army leaves the war zone, what are the chances of defending and counterattacking? Mu Failong's face was ugly as he asked in a hoarse voice. If there is no Gongyang Matian's army, we can spare 400,000 soldiers and let them rest for 3 days. Then we can replace the 600,000 soldiers that were defending. After 3 more days, we can mobilize 600,000 soldiers to counterattack the army of Shattering Army. However, in such a good situation, how can Gongyang Matian give up such a fat piece of meat and turn away? The young man called Chao Kuan frowned and asked. Mu Failong's lips curled up. He looked at Lu Zhantian and said indifferently, as long as Zhantian agrees to let them go, Gongyang Matian's army will quickly leave the war zone. However, he won't let them go. Help me persuade him. Chao Kuan and the other experts from Divinity College frowned and looked at Lu Zhantian. At the same time, they criticized him. Is there such a thing? Are you crazy? At this time, we can't wait to have a Gongyang Matian's army retreat, but you still want them to stay in the war zone? Is this what a commander should do? The corner of Lu Zhantian's mouth twitched. He was speechless. Mu Failong quickly explained the situation of the Mu clan and the sudden appearance of the insane sect. Chao Kuan and the others immediately understood and pressured Lu Zhantian. They threatened Lu Zhantian that if he didn't let Gongyang Matian's army go to support the insane sect, they would immediately retreat. They would have to bear all the consequences. Lu Zhantian smiled bitterly. Once the 12 of them retreated, the Mu clan's army would instantly collapse. The million soldiers would become meat under the butcher's knife and be slaughtered. Brother Yi, we can only rely on you. As long as you can delay them for a month, I will go back to support them even if I have to risk my life. Lu Zhantian gritted his teeth and gave the order to open Dongling Pass. He allowed Gongyang Matian's army to pass through Dongling Pass and attack the insane sect. Gongyang Matian once again mobilized 300,000 soldiers and 3 frontline commanders. The pressure on the war zone was indeed reduced, but the insane sect was now in the most dangerous place. Chapter 587. Gongyang Matian led a 110,000-strong army around the Gan Mountain range. intending to fight the insane sect head-on. Yi Qinghan did not hesitate. He did not know if Gongyang Matian would go crazy and destroy the endless plains, but he did not dare to gamble. Go to the end of the Gan mountain range and fight Gongyang Matian to the death. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The inner sect members of the insane sect had no choice, including Stan Huangtian. He still had feelings for the endless plains. The endless plains was the place he had spent his whole life protecting. After living a second life, he understood that the endless plains were his foundation. Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue led the Lulan Blade and the Dragon Cavalry and began their rapid march. We have no chance of winning. The 110,000-strong army is the main force of a prefecture. Our army will not be able to withstand a single blow in a frontal assault. We, the inner sect members, will not be able to stop so many people without a barrier like the Gan mountain range. Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue found Yi Qinghan and understood the situation. Using the Gan mountain range and the 7 demise snake's poison to kill so many soldiers was already a miracle. It was almost impossible to create another miracle. We have to fight even if we lose. We have no choice. Yi Qinghan said in a hoarse voice. He was also very tired after these few days of overloaded battles. Killing 30,000 Motian guards in one night was shocking news. If it were not for the fact that the passageway was too narrow and unsuitable for a large army to charge through, he and the star-twisting vine alone would not be able to stop Dong's 30,000 Motian guards. Although Yi Qinghan was very tired and wanted to rest, there was no time for him to do so. Yi Qinghan took out the 10 directions returned to one art, and the 10 directions seal that the second sorcerer had bestowed upon him. He looked at the ancient shaman characters. Although he could recognize them, they were still difficult to understand. Staring at the runes, he felt like his soul was being burned. I have to break through to the divine worship realm first. Otherwise, there is no hope. Yi Qinghan sat cross-legged on the god-slaying eagle's back, following the army as he started to condense the 4th godhead, the earth godhead. With the growing soil as the foundation, Yi Qinghan's godhead condensation speed was much faster than the previous 3 godheads. Boundless faith energy gathered in his sea of consciousness, churning madly. Then, Yi Qinghan devoured more than a dozen broken godheads, and the 4th earth godhead was formed in no time. Yi Qinghan needed to condense the 5 elements godhead if he wanted to break through to the next level. He had already condensed the godhood of metal, godhood of fire, and godhood of water. Now, as long as he condensed the godhood of wood and godhood of earth, he would be able to gather all 5 elements. Breaking through to the extreme Tao was just a matter of convenience. The profound of earth appeared, and all the earth elements in the world gathered in his sea of consciousness. With a wave of his hand, the earth trembled, and mountains moved and seas filled. Suddenly, Yi Qinghan erupted with divine light and rushed into the clouds. The 4th godhead was formed. The remaining divinity crystals in Yi Qinghan's body were quickly refined, and a large amount of divine energy gathered in the godhood of earth. The energy of the earth was refined into divine energy, and it rushed into the godhead continuously. The godhood of earth was instantly filled with boundless strength. Yi Qinghan was not satisfied. After the 4th godhead was formed, he began to condense the 5th godhead, the godhood of wood. Once all 5 elements were gathered, his divine energy would reach the limit, and he would be able to break through to the extreme Tao. Then he would be qualified to cultivate the 10 directions coalescence technique. Only Yi Qinghan understood the power of the 10 directions seal. As long as he could mobilize it, it was not impossible for him to kill a mid-level god in an instant. It would be easy for him to suppress an army of tens of thousands with one strike. Yi Qinghan's divine aura was vast and mighty, and it suppressed the heavens as if a true god had descended. The hundreds of thousands of eccentric sex soldiers were stunned. They had never seen such a lesser god in their lives. Faith, worship, kneel. The 200,000 soldiers were all emperor level and above. Their faith was even purer, comparable to the faith of a small plane. In an instant, it rushed into Yi Qinghan's sea of consciousness. The 5th godhead was condensed faster than the 4th, and Yi Qinghan was filled with vitality. The 5 elements godheads were all transferred to Yi Qinghan's sea of consciousness by Yi Qinghan. They were suspended above the sea of sufferings, and they were constantly rotating. Divine light filled the air, and it triggered a vision of heaven and earth. The light of the 5 elements covered a radius of 10,000 miles, and even the soldiers were blessed. They felt warm all over, and they could not wait to break through. They had a deeper understanding of their elemental attributes. The army stopped moving forward, and even the inner sect of the eccentric sect was stunned. In the past, they could stand shoulder to shoulder with Yi Qinghan, but now, they paled in comparison to Yi Qinghan. At this moment, Yi Qinghan felt his exhaustion disappear. He had endless power and vitality, and his divine body was unprecedentedly strong. Yi Qinghan swallowed dozens of mid-grade divine crystals, filling the 5 godheads with divine power. At the same time, he mobilized the 5 elements godheads to break through to the lower extreme divine priest realm. His power and understanding were all present. He only needed one last push. Open! Yi Qinghan mobilized all his divine power and broke through the bottleneck of the lower extreme divine priest realm. The bottleneck was shattered. Boom! A terrifying and domineering aura shot up into the sky as if a mad god had descended. When his eyes opened, they could pierce through heaven and earth. His will alone was enough to suppress the divine priest realm. Yi Qinghan raised his hand slightly, and it was as if he could suppress all living things. The 200,000 soldiers looked at Yi Qinghan in horror, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Yi Qinghan had become the faith of the eccentric sect. With him around, the eccentric sect's army would never fall. The 200,000 soldiers gained confidence from Yi Qinghan, and they felt that the main force of the Gongyang prefecture was not unbeatable. Victory! The eccentric sect will win. Di Longtian shouted excitedly, and it resonated with the 200,000 soldiers. They roared in unison, and their momentum soared to the sky. What do you think? Yi Qinghan looked at Medusa. He wanted to make sure that his strength was comparable to that of a medium divine priest. As long as he could fight against Gongyang Matian, the main force of 100,000 soldiers would be defeated. After all, the eccentric sect still had the 12th stage 7 demise serpent and Medusa. With the 2 of them and the inner sect of the eccentric sect attacking together, the army of 100,000 soldiers would soon be defeated. It's equivalent to an ordinary medium divine priest, but compared to Gongyang Matian, it's still a level lower. Medusa took a deep breath and said truthfully, "If you and Huang Er join forces, you can stand shoulder to shoulder with Gongyang Matian. But if you want to kill him, you won't have the chance." Yi Qinghan nodded. If he wanted to defeat Gongyang Matian, he must break through the great circle of the lower divine priest realm and rely on the 5 elements divine power to display his strongest combat strength. Only then would he be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Gongyang Matian. Gongyang Matian should be an existence that had received a title. The Great Emperor realm was very important. If one could obtain a title, compared to the Great Emperor who did not have a title, one's future would be limitless. Army, continue to march. I am confident that I can kill Gongyang Matian. Yi Qinghan's aura turned cold. Gongyang Matian was merely an extreme mid-level almighty priest, a realm lower than him. With the 10 Directions seal, a high-level divine artifact, killing an extreme mid-level almighty priest would be a piece of cake. It all depended on whether or not Gongyang Matian could activate the 10 Directions seal. The 10 Directions seal was at least a high divine weapon. Even if it was the lowest grade high divine weapon, it could easily crush anyone below the high divine priest realm. If the 10 Directions seal was in the hands of the Mu Manor's master, he was confident that he could kill any Manor master. As long as the other party did not have a high divine weapon. Yi Qinghan did not know what grade the 10 Directions seal was, so he temporarily determined it to be a high divine weapon. At this moment, he took out the 10 Direction Return to 1 technique again. Yi Qinghan lowered his eyes and looked at the sorcery technique, greedily absorbing the knowledge on it. He understood that if he wanted to cultivate the 10 Direction Return to 1 technique, he must be able to control the space of 10 directions, and his space law must be cultivated to the Great Accomplishment realm, before he could use the 10 Direction Return to 1. Yi Qinghan's space law was only at the Small Accomplishment realm. It was still far from the Great Accomplishment realm, or even the Great Perfection realm. It was impossible for him to cultivate the 10-direction return to one technique. Right now, he could only conquer the 10-direction seal, using the 10-direction seal to suppress others. Hissed at Yi Qinghan tore open his palm and forced out a drop of his heart's blood. His face instantly turned pale. Go! Yi Qinghan poured his heart's blood into the 10-direction seal. The blood of the sorcerer tribe and the 5 elements in the heart's blood immediately resonated with the 10-direction seal. The 10-direction seal shone brightly, and its pressure was terrifying. It directly pressed down on the army, and even the god-slaying eagle fell to the ground with a cry. Boom! 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 More than 40 people from the insane sect's inner sect were caught off guard. They were ruthlessly smashed down from the sky by a superior aura. Even Medusa and the 7 Demise Viper were no exception. Poof! The army coughed up blood, and the ordinary soldiers fell unconscious. Medusa and the rank 12-7 Demise Viper were terrified. It was as if they were facing an existence that was more powerful than the Mansion Master. They were powerless to resist. This is... The rank 12-7 Demise Viper was terrified. Its body trembled, and it lay on the ground, not daring to move. A superior divine artifact? Medusa was not sure. After all, superior divine artifacts were too rare. There were less than 10 of them in the entire mythical existential plane. It was impossible for Yi Qinghan to get his hands on one. The superior divine artifact was restrained and only spread out within a radius of 100 miles. Otherwise, it would definitely cause a heavenly anomaly and alarm the supreme powerhouses of the 3 divine kingdoms. Yi Qinghan tried his best to communicate with the 10-direction seal, but the strength of his soul was not up to the standard of the 10-direction seal. He kept coughing up blood, and blood spurted out of his 7 orifices. Under the pressure of the divine artifact, his body trembled. My son, help me! Emperor Yez and Yi Qinghan's souls immediately became one. The 2 souls fused, and they instantly became one with the world. They finally resonated with the 10-direction seal. The 10-direction seal kept spinning and rushed into Yi Qinghan's consciousness. The pressure dissipated. The rank 12-7 Demise Viper and Medusa were still in shock. They looked at Yi Qinghan in horror. What is that? Medusa had lived for 1,000,000 years, but she still could not see the origins of the 10-direction seal. She could not help but ask. The 10-direction seal. Yi Qinghan transmitted his voice in a low voice. He did not dare to reveal the 10-direction seal. The 10-direction seal. The primordial wizard tribe's most valuable treasure. It is said to be a top-grade superior divine artifact. It might also be a master divine artifact. However, no one has ever been able to unleash its full potential. Medusa murmured. She looked at Yi Qinghan and felt that she could not see through Yi Qinghan's future. Boom. Just as everyone was in shock, there was a sudden burst of light. The divine bird, cloud beast, and star-twining vine in Yi Qinghan's body were suddenly forcefully smashed out. They fell heavily to the ground. The cloud beast and star-twining vine looked at Yi Qinghan in confusion. They did not understand why Yi Qinghan had forced them out of his consciousness. The divine bird cursed loudly. It had secretly eaten so many divine herbs and treasures. It was just about to break through when it was thrown out by Yi Qinghan. It was very depressed. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. This 10-direction seal was too tyrannical. It actually occupied his consciousness. Even the 5 elements godhood was imprisoned above the sea of misery. It was unable to enter the heavy berserk saber. Chapter 588. Yi Qinghan gave a brief explanation to appease his 3 mythical beasts and spiritual plants. Then he ordered the army to continue moving forward and try to block the intersection between the Gan Mountain Range and the Xianyue Mountain Range. The intersection was a huge plain that was large enough for the army to charge through. At this moment, he only wanted to destroy the Kuang sect and kill Yi Qinghan to regain his prestige. He was the god of war, but he was almost annihilated by a group of nameless soldiers. He could not accept this. If this battle was in Lu Zhantian's hands, he would have a reason to explain. After all, the Gan Mountain Range was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, he was facing a famous general. It was hard to predict who would win. But facing a small and inexplicable sect that didn't even have a grade, they had lost just like that. Moreover, they had lost so many people, while the other side had only lost a few tens of thousands of soldiers. The number of priests that had been lost was limited. How could he accept this? Full speed ahead. Rest after crossing the mountain range. Gongyang Matian roared. He did not want to wait for reinforcements to arrive before attacking. If he could not defeat the Kuang sect in advance, he would lose face in front of Gongyang. Gongyang Matian was flustered and exasperated, but this also made the East Pacifying Army and Mo Tianwei suffer. However, they all wanted to make a contribution. Now that the 3 supervisors and half of the higher-ups were dead, this battle was bound to be a battle of merit. Whether they could become a Chiliarch or 10,000 men commander depended on this. Just as Gongyang Matian was hurriedly marching, 2 experts rushed from behind. The one in the lead was Gongyang Manor's grand strategist, Zhuge Xianqing. It was said that he had obtained the inheritance of the ancient man, and was well versed in the mysteries of formations. He was very good at leading troops in battle, and had been invited by Gongyang Manor's mansion lord 3 times. The other was Gongyang Prefecture's army's vanguard, Li Wu. He was the king of soldiers, and a medium god priest. His combat power was slightly inferior to Gongyang Matian, but far superior to the average medium god priest. The 2 of them caught up with Gongyang Matian's army in advance. Young Marshal, please rest for a while and wait for the chief to arrive with his army. Zhuge Xianqing held a feather fan in his hand. He had white hair and looked very dignified. He spoke to the young marshal in the same tone. Gongyang Matian's breath stagnated. He frowned and said, "My father is here too? I alone am enough to deal with the Kuang sect." Young marshal, do you still not understand? The Mu clan has opened the Dongling Pass several times, and allowed us to enter their rear. This means that the Mu clan's master is not afraid that we will defeat the Kuang sect. The Kuang sect's appearance is inexplicable. This only means that the Kuang sect has some ability. The master of the Mu clan wants you to be careful, Zhuge Xianqing reminded Yi Futian. Gongyang Matian refused to believe it. He clenched his fists and asked in a hoarse voice, "With Mister's help and Li Wu's help, can't we defeat the Kuangzong? The 200,000 strong army of the Kuang sect is just a ragtag army. They can't even be called third-rate. How can the dozens of people from the inner sect of the Kuang sect fight against my army of 100,000? How did the prefecture god army fall? How was the wolf army destroyed? How did more than half of your Mo Tianwei get wiped out?" Zhuge Xianqing asked. Humph. When Gongyang Matian heard this, he immediately snorted. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He said, "I underestimated the enemy. I didn't expect that they would be able to hollow out the entire Gon Mountain Ridge. I also didn't expect that the 12th rank 7 ultimate snake would help the Kuang sect, and cause most of my army to be poisoned to death. To be able to hollow out the entire Gon Mountain Ridge without any flaws means that they have a divine pangolin. These things can't be explained by underestimating the enemy. When leading an army to war, especially in a place like Gon Mountain Ridge that is easy to defend and difficult to attack, you must first take all factors into consideration. It's not that you underestimated the enemy, but that the Kuang sect in your eyes was too weak to withstand a single blow. Young Marshal, you lost because you were too conceited," Zhuge Xianqing said coldly. Although he was dissatisfied, he could not refute Zhuge Xianqing. He only wanted to vent his anger, so he said, "You're right, mister. However, this defeat has made me lose face. If I wait for my father to arrive, it will not be a glorious victory. Please help me take down the Kuang sect before my father arrives. Then, we'll combine our armies and attack the Mu clan's base camp. We'll let them be attacked from the back, and the Mu clan will collapse on its own." "Young Marshal, the prefecture master asked you to wait here." Li Wu frowned and reminded him. "A general can't obey military orders when he's outside. Do you always follow the rules when you fight? My father only cares about whether we can win or not military orders. Do you dare to face the Kuang sect? Could it be that I've suffered a defeat that has scared all of your guts out?" Gongyang Matian questioned. The corner of Zhuge Xuanqing's mouth twitched. It seemed that Gongyang Matian's desire to establish his power could not be changed. Thinking about it carefully, the Kuang sect was indeed a little strange. But in the face of a famous general, the strongest vanguard in Gongyang Prefecture, and an omnipotent military advisor, the Kuang sect had no chance of turning the tables. Alright, but we can't let the army be too tired. Otherwise, we'll be attacked by the Kuang sect again. The East Pacifying Army will be exhausted and suffer heavy losses. Zhuge Xianqing cautiously reminded. Gongyang Matian smiled evilly. Would the Kuang sect's army dare to attack the East Pacifying Army? The East Pacifying Army had been through hundreds of battles. Even if they had 200,000 soldiers, they might not be able to win against the 110,000 soldiers and Mo Tianwei, let alone 200,000 soldiers. The Kuang sect's army rushed day and night, and finally arrived at the intersection ahead of time. Rest here. Send scouts to find out where Gongyang Matian's army is. Report back immediately if they're 1,000 miles away. Lu Outyin said in a deep voice. Everything here was handed over to Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue. Yi Qinghan only needed to focus on his cultivation. The more he improved, the more confident he would be in victory. Emperor Yi took out a large amount of divine sparks and divine medicines to provide to the army. Even the squad leader received a broken divine sparks. This battle was very important. These resources were not wasted. If they won, they would receive 10 times the resources. If they lost, everyone would die. There was no need to save so many resources. The Kuang sect's army was excited. These broken divine sparks were priceless. At least for the Kuang sect's army, it was a treasure. Many of them might be able to enter the God realm because of these broken divine sparks. Lu Outyin and Xia Qiyue promised that all the armaments from this battle would be rewarded to the army according to their contributions. They would choose a group of meritorious service members and cultivate them into the God realm. The army was excited. Even if it was the main army, they would have to make a great contribution to get the divine sparks. However, the threshold for the Kuang sect's army was much lower. When the East Pacifying Army appears, we will take the initiative to attack and catch them off guard. What do you think? Xia Qiyue said in a deep voice. I agree. If we want to win this battle, we must take them by surprise. They will definitely think that we don't dare to take the initiative to attack, so they will rest in front of us. Lu Outyin looked ahead. It happened to be a plain that was suitable for the army to camp. Dig defensive fortifications. After the army attacks, they will definitely counterattack. It will be enough if we can withstand their attack. We need to dig traps in front. No matter if it works or not, we have to try. The people of the Kuang sect's inner sect gave their suggestions. Xiaojia played a big role. Pangolins could even pass through mountains, let alone this vast plain. The ground at the intersection was once again dug out by Xiaojia. Countless 7 demise snakes were breathing out poisonous gas underground. Once it exploded, it would definitely cause a disaster. Even if it could not kill the God realm, it could still kill a part of the East Pacifying Army. At this moment, the Kuang sect's army was full of confidence. Their morale was high. They felt that they would definitely win this battle. Yi Qinghan had given them confidence. Gongyang Matian was still conceited. He was unwilling to listen to Zhuge Xuanqing's opinion. He did not care that the East Pacifying Army and Mo Tianwei were exhausted. He forced the army to rush to the intersection. They were still 300 miles away from the intersection. They only needed 2 hours. The spies of the Kuang sect began to withdraw and report back to the Kuang sect. Yi Qinghan was still practicing. The origin of the 5 elements had reached the realm of Deshang. He could turn the world upside down with a wave of his hand. After a day of hard work, he could finally use the Shifeng seal. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan stood up and walked out of the barracks in his battle robe. The army of the savage sect was even more imposing as they looked at Yi Qinghan with admiration. If they could have such a battle prowess like him in this life, so what if they died? Yi Qinghan looked at the army's high morale and nodded slightly to show his approval. Brothers, I promise that as long as we can withstand this battle, I will make all of you lesser God realm. Yi Qinghan's low voice resounded in every corner of the camp. Kuang sect. Kuang sect. Becoming a God realm priest was their lifelong pursuit. Only by becoming a god realm priest could they be promoted to decanus and slowly climb to the position of centurion, or even chiliarch. Only by entering the upper echelons of the army could they have the opportunity to reach the peak. Most of the people who joined the army had no background. If they wanted to succeed, they had to work hard to become a god realm priest. Only by becoming a god realm priest could they have the right to see and control their own lives. The two sharp blades of the Kuang sect were formed today. Any powerful sect must have its own army. Without an army, no matter how powerful the sect was, it would be vulnerable unless it had a superior god realm priest. For that kind of existence, numbers would not make the slightest difference. Kill the East pacifying army and take their godhood. You will be gods. Yi Qinghan raised his blade and shouted. His voice was like thunder, and was even more shocking than the sky-shaking drum. Victory! Victory! The army shouted and resonated with Yi Qinghan. Their morale soared to the sky. The army of the Kuang sect rested for half the night, and adjusted to their strongest state. Only then did the East pacifying army and Mo Tianwei appear at the intersection, exhausted. Let's rest here. Zhuge Xianqing suddenly stopped the army, and did not let the East pacifying army enter the plain area. This made the trap dug by Xiao Jia useless. Although Gongyang Matian was not far away, Zhuge Xuanqing's attitude was firm, and he could only choose to agree. Send spies to the front. The enemy has a pangolin. I don't believe that the trap will only be used once. Zhuge Xianqing, the old fox, was worthy of being the military advisor. He was deeply loved by Gongyang Prefecture Master. Dozens of spies moved step by step, and used their divine power to test the ground. When they came to the plain area, they found that it was indeed empty. They used their divine power to shatter the upper layer of the earth. The poisonous gas inside instantly rushed up and drowned them. The spies did not have time to dodge and fell one by one. Only a few god realm priests escaped. Gongyang Matian trembled all over. He looked at the poisonous gas in front of him and gritted his teeth. Despicable people. I'll let you reap what you sow. Gongyang Matian was furious. If it were not for Zhuge Xianqing, the poisonous gas would have caused great damage to the East pacifying army. Boom. Gongyang Matian rushed towards the poisonous gas. His divine power poured out and rolled up gusts of wind, rolling the poisonous gas towards the camp of the Kuang sect. Chapter 589. Gongyang Matian took the lead to attack, rolling up the poisonous gas and pushing it to the other side. He wanted the insane sect's army to reap what they had sown. Roar! The 12th rank 7 demise snake flew into the sky, rolling up the poisonous gas and swallowing it all in one gulp. Then it spat it out and rushed towards Gongyang Matian. Gongyang Matian was shocked. He flew backwards and was almost drowned by the poisonous gas. His face turned pale. Archers, get ready. Shoot this bastard to death. Gongyang Matian was so angry that he lost his mind. He called over a large group of archers and mounted a huge 2-meter-long crossbow. Shoot it. Every time you hit it, I will reward you with a godhead. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Tens of thousands of crossbow bolts flew into the sky, breaking through the void and rolling up 10,000 li of space. The space kept collapsing and swallowing the poisonous gas. The 12th rank 7 demise snake flew into the sky and rushed towards the clouds. Thousands of crossbow bolts flew past him. More than 10 bolts actually broke through his defense and shot into the snake's body. Roar! Roar! The 12th rank 7 demise snake's body couldn't block the crossbow bolts. The bolts directly entered his body. The 7 demise snake screamed, and the eardrums were pierced. The ordinary soldiers within 10 li of the snake were all shocked to death. Even the priests were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Dong dong dong. The heaven-shaking drum was beaten and collided with the dragon's roar. The sky collapsed again as if it was the end of the world. The 7 demise snake returned to the insane sect's camp. There were more than 10 crossbow bolts in his body. He was dripping with blood and emitted a poisonous smell. No one could get close to him. Yi Qinghan walked over and waved his hand, sucking the crossbow bolt out of the air. The 7 demise serpent let out a low growl as its bell-like eyes stared fixedly at Gongyang Matian. Murderous intent radiating from its body. Yi Qinghan once again mobilized the origin of wood to heal the snake's wounds. Then, he leaped onto the head of the 12th grade 7 demise serpent. He waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "If you want revenge, then follow me." Roar. The 7 demise snake's 5 claws shattered the ground. He took the lead and rushed towards the enemy camp. The dragon cavalry army behind him followed closely. "Follow me." Lu Outyin, Di Longtian, and Xia Chiyue rushed out at the same time, leading the army to the other side. The trap in the middle was only 10 meters wide. They jumped over it. Dong dong dong. Tan Huangtian and the others beat the sky-shaking drum. The sound of the drum shook the heavens and shook the blood of the gods. The insane sex army was full of vigor. Even the most ordinary soldiers were extremely excited. They wanted nothing more than to kill the enemy. Hum hum hum. The sound of Emperor Yezguqin was so solemn and stirring that it made people's blood boil. There were at least 200,000 soldiers in the crazy sex army, while the enemy only had 110,000. In terms of numbers, the crazy sex army clearly had the upper hand. Coupled with the vanguard of dozens of individual kings, they actually crushed the East Pacifying Army and Mo Tianwei in terms of momentum. "Young Marshal, leave the charge to me." Li Wu was incomparably powerful. Wielding a spear and wearing a divine robe, he stepped onto an ancient beast that was over 30 meters long. He led his army to press down on Yi Qinghan's group. They didn't even bother with the most basic formation. In their eyes, killing Yi Qinghan would only be a matter of an instant. "You go and kill the army. Leave Yi Qinghan to me." Gong Yang Matian hated Yi Qinghan and the 7 demise snakes to the core. He pulled out his sword and rushed towards Yi Qinghan. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. A sword pierced through the sky. Tens of thousands of sword rays were extremely dazzling and directly surrounded Yi Qinghan. "You go and deal with that vanguard." Yi Qinghan let the 7 demise snakes deal with Li Wu. He pounced on Gong Yang Matian alone. The veins on his body bulged and danced wildly. The light of the 5 elements appeared on his blade, vast and mighty. In an instant, the light of the blade and the shadow of the sword collided forcefully. Hum hum hum. Boom boom boom. The Heavenly Dipper 108 Heavenly Slashes blade technique evolved into countless blade rays. Each blade had the power of hundreds of thousands of kilograms. It cut through time and space, shook the shackles, and collided with Gong Yang Matian's sword chi. "Open!" Yi Qinghan roared. His voice was like thunder. His battle-intent soared to the sky, frightening the army around him. Hua. 7-foot berserk's body carried the power of the 5 elements. His divine power poured out and turned into a sky-splitting divine blade. He directly pounced on Gong Yang Matian. "You've come at the right time. I'm going to cut you into pieces." Gong Yang Matian roared. His sword was like flowing water, piercing towards Yi Qinghan's berserk. Boom. The two's speed was as fast as lightning. Their hearts were filled with anger. They couldn't wait to kill each other. Without any superfluous moves, they directly attacked each other. The ear-piercing sound of the collision directly shook the experts thousands of meters away. The army didn't dare to approach the two and fled. Stab stabbed at the sword and the berserk collided, constantly trembling. Yi Qinghan's palm was torn, flesh and blood splattered. Even the berserk almost broke. If it wasn't for the power of the 5 elements protecting him, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the divine weapon in his opponent's hand. Boom. The two exploded again in an instant. Their battle strength had reached its peak. Yi Qinghan was directly blasted back by Gong Yang Matian. His footsteps crushed the ground as he continuously retreated. Hua. The berserk heavy blade dragged on the ground. He wanted to stabilize his body, but he couldn't. Humph. Gong Yang Matian snorted. Although he had forced Yi Qinghan back a few hundred steps, his own aura was also stagnant. He couldn't take advantage of the opportunity to kill him. It wasn't easy for him to adjust his breathing. He immediately shouted, "I'll let you see what sword skills are." Xiao xiao xiao. The sword in Gong Yang Matian's hand trembled. The space in front of him fluctuated, forming 3 huge lotus flowers. The lotus leaves tore through the void unstoppable. Die. Gong Yang Matian exploded. His sword was like a rainbow, containing supreme sword skills. It pierced through the void and directly slashed towards Yi Qinghan's body. Boom! Yi Qinghan laughed disdainfully. Instead, he slammed his berserk heavy blade into the ground and summoned a divine sword. Gathering power, he transformed into a sword god. His sword cut through the river. It was simply too fast. This was the sword skill he had learned in the shaman god's tomb. One sword pierced through 3 swords at the same time. The sword scar couldn't be repaired even by a self-healing divine weapon like the stone tablet. Xiao that the powerful sword intent caused the sword Dao between heaven and earth to resonate. It was as if the sword emperor had descended. The swords between heaven and earth involuntarily submitted. Tens of thousands of swords flew towards the 9 heavens. Many divine swords left the hands of the gods. Ing. Tens of thousands of swords cried out, the whistling sound shaking the heavens and earth. What sword skill is this? At this moment, all the sword Dao masters were stunned, including Xia Qiyue and Gu Qingyu. They didn't think that Yi Qinghan had actually cultivated the sword Dao to such a level, and had such a powerful sword skill. Gongyang Matian's sword aura was instantly defeated. His sword heart was almost shattered. He coughed up blood and flew backwards. His face was full of shock and unwillingness. He roared, "This is impossible. What level of sword skill is this?" No one could recognize what sword skill this was. Other than the people of the barbaric era, no one could recognize it. Because those who had seen this sword skill had already died in the shaman god's tomb. Great Annihilation Sword Skill. Yi Qinghan used 5 godhoods and exhausted all his divine power to slash out a supreme sword. One sword turned into 3 swords. At this moment, Gongyang Matian was that sword steel. No matter how fast he was or how strong his divine power was, he couldn't dodge this sure kill attack. When the Great Annihilation Sword skill was cultivated to the highest level, one sword could destroy the entire middle plane. This was no longer within the scope of divine techniques. It was a supreme divine technique, a secret technique that only the priests of the higher gods could cultivate. Xiao. 3 swords pierced through the air and directly slashed at Gongyang Matian's chest. Boom! Gongyang Matian's divine power poured out in torrents as he desperately defended, but his divine body was like tofu, unable to withstand a single blow. It was directly penetrated by the sword qi, and no matter how he tried to repair it, he couldn't repair his injured body. His physical body's vitality was constantly dissipating. No! Gongyang Matian roared in horror. Once the physical body was destroyed, only the godhood was left. If he wanted to condense a golden body again, it would take at least thousands of years to recover to his peak state. But at this moment, if the godhood didn't escape, it would be penetrated by the sword qi in his body. At that time, even his soul wouldn't be able to escape. So he had to give up his physical body. Boom! Just as Gongyang Matian's godhood escaped from his consciousness, Gongyang Matian's physical body directly exploded, shattering into pieces. Everyone was stupefied. Yi Qinghan had killed a mid-level god priest with a single strike of his sword. Moreover, it was a mid-level almighty god priest. How did he do it? Li Wu glanced at Yi Qinghan in horror, feeling a chill run down his spine. Gongyang Matian urged his godhood to flee to the rear. He only dared to turn back when he fled into the army camp. Seeing Yi Qinghan standing in place, he immediately roared, "His divine power has been exhausted. Kill him for me. Whoever kills him will be directly promoted to captain, and rewarded with a medium god spark." Not bad. At this moment, the divine power of Yi Qinghan's 5 godhoods, as well as the divine power stored in his body, had been exhausted by this sword strike. He couldn't even lift his heavy berserk blade. He could only be slaughtered. But how could Yi Qinghan not have a backup plan? The god-slaying eagle directly rushed out of his arm, grabbed the heavy berserk blade, and carried Yi Qinghan into the sky, cutting through the 9 heavens. At this moment, they had already killed Gongyang Matian. Yi Qinghan was no longer needed on the battlefield. The momentum of the insane sect's army had risen to its peak. Then Lu Outyan and the others rushed into the enemy group. Their commander is already dead. Now catch the godhood. Whoever catches it will be rewarded. Xia Qiyue roared and personally led the army to charge forward. She couldn't wait to kill one person with her sword. Yi Qinghan had given her a big blow, but at this moment, she wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Then, she could ask Yi Qinghan for advice on sword techniques. Gu Qingyu, Lin Wutian, and the rest of the people who practiced sword techniques were excited. There was actually such a sword technique in the world. It was extremely powerful. At this moment, even Zhuge Xianqing was stunned. He had originally wanted to lead his army of 40,000 to turn into a sharp knife and pierce into the flanks of the Guangzong's army from the left and right, completely destroying the enemy's army. However, Yi Qinghan's sword made him hesitate. Where did this boy come from? This is definitely not an ordinary sword technique. It should be a superior divine technique. Does he have a superior divine technique behind him? Zhuge Xuanqing's brain worked very quickly. He had never seen a young man with a superior divine technique behind him come out to establish a sect. Moreover, it was such a small sect. This boy can't be offended. No wonder the old man of the Mu clan opened Dongling Pass so many times and asked us to come and support him. It turns out that he is not afraid of the insane sect being defeated. Once we kill Yi Qinghan, a superior divine technique will intervene. Thinking of this, Zhuge Xianqing trembled and his face turned pale. For a moment, he didn't know whether to retreat or submit to Yi Qinghan. Submitting to Yi Qinghan was equivalent to submitting to a superior divine technique. This was a relationship that even the Mu clan master wanted. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.